All right, greetings everybody. We're gonna let folks come on in here. We delayed the start time just a few minutes, just to get to know Chuck a little bit, since we just found out about him. I did in the last week or so, and but we both, Scott and I, immediately connected with his message and the way that he presents this information.
Nope.
And let's see, I'm just going to make sure this
we're having Malinois problems over here.
Yeah,
What a stubborn dog.
There we go. Yes, there we go.
I'm excited about this.
We're
show.
live. We are live. We're
That's
on
fantastic.
both Twitter. Anyone watching us on Twitter, most of the chat, unless I can bounce over, is going to be on Rumble. Just so you guys know. We have a new screen over here so we can see some more of the chat. I don't see it yet, Scott. I don't know how we could see that over there.
Well, you're going to roll a separate window over into that screen with the chat when the time comes.
When the time comes. Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
And then, guys, we do have the live chat on Rumble. If you have down the road, maybe we'll have some time for questions. We do like to include the audience, but since this is our first time chatting with Chuck, we have a lot to learn. And we're sorry, Scott's adjusting the camera.
Yeah, if anyone's prone to seizures, look away.
On the live. There we go. So Chuck, first of all, thank you for saying yes to this. He doesn't really know too much about TruthStream, but I mean, I already know that he's a great fit just because this is a lot of the subject matter that Scott has talked about over the years, and Chuck has found a way to make it just so palatable. I think. I mean, it's still maybe not palatable for the subject matter.
Approachable.
Approachable. Thank you. Approachable.
More easily understood. It's so complex.
It is, and he is the son of a preacher man. And I was watching his interview with a lovely gal named Ashley that he has on his channel. He'll be putting this on his channel as well once he has a more edited version. And it's just interesting to hear the background of your father and you, and you know, he's based in Christianity, and here you are coming along and upsetting the system, and how that's been a challenge for the relationship, but it's done with love. And I'd love you to go into, you know, a bit about your background and your struggle with cancer and how your awakening. And I know people can go into more depth on the interview with Ashley, but yeah, why don't we start with a little bit about your background and how this came to be? Because this sounds like it's really been in the last 10 years that you really dug hard into this. Yeah. Or please go ahead. Why don't you talk?
Yeah. Well, okay. So I was raised in a Christian family by a very well-known man named Charles Swindoll. He's my father. And my father I love and adore. We have a beautiful relationship, my father and I. Obviously, my choices and the direction that I've gone in my life, the things I write about, the things I philosophize about, he has very strong disagreement with. But as far as my youth and growing up, yes, I grew up in a very conservative evangelical church. My father was invited to First Evangelical Free Church in Fullerton, California in 1971. I was born in 70 in Dallas, but the only thing I remember is Southern California. I lived in the same house for 20 years. We moved there in 71, and I have three siblings, Kurt, Carissa, and Colleen. I'm the youngest of four, and I say this loosely, had as normal of youth and upbringing as kind of you could imagine, but in such a powerful family. My father, his book started selling around 1976 with a book called For Those Who Hurt, and then he followed that up with a book called Second Wind and another one called Killing Giants and Pulling Thorns. And within about 5 years, or even less than that, he wrote this book called Improving Your Serve, and that really launched him. And from about 1979, the year my brother Kurt graduated from high school, until about 1981, we were just on a ramp. And the power of my father, the influence of my father, our financial situation at the house, all of these things were transformed. Up all through the 70s, we had a pretty normal life. I helped install the plumbing system in the backyard with my dad and my brother. We had neighbors that helped us out. My dad was the local pastor at the local church. And as normal as that can be, that's kind of how it was for about 8 years. But my father's a gifted expositor, and it was just a matter of time before he would be discovered. And so right around the mid 80s, everything changed for us. And this really, this really cemented me into the belief system called Christianity, because my father was so successful, and we had such incredible power and influence everywhere we went, in the neighborhood, to dinners, lunches, anything. Everyone knew who my father was. Everyone knew us, and so it was very abnormal in that sense. And I was unaware of that at the time, and this is going to go somewhere. So follow me on this. So I was really growing up in a bubble. And very privileged. I got what I wanted, and I had a really nice car in high school. I got the things that I wanted, and so without my knowing it, I'm the person in high school that everybody hates, because I'm the guy that gets everything he wants and is privileged. And I didn't know this, but at the time, that's what was going on. And so I was living in a very odd bubble growing up, that I thought was reality, but it wasn't. And so this carried on for some time. I ended up working for my father, or with my father, at a church called Stonebriar Community Church. I took the job when I was 28. I married when I was 21, 22, and I have 2 kids. And so when I was 28, I had little kids, and I needed a really good job. I hated education. I hated university. So I was kind of struggling in life, you could say. And this is a real opportunity for me to be a part of something what I thought at the time was really great and would have a huge impact that was good on society. I've always had that inside of me, as a desire to help society, be a friend to society, be a person who is an exemplar of helping others and loving others. And so this is what Christianity teaches on the outside. And so I really thought that I was a part of something like that. And so I worked there for 15 years, raised my kids, all in Texas. This was in Frisco, Texas, where this all took place, from age of 28 until I was about 40, 41. And then I contracted cancer. And that was really when everything changed. And so I contracted cancer in late 2011, 2012. And let's see, I was diagnosed in January. And this is really when things began to go rough with my father, because my father is a big believer in Western medicine, and he's a big staunch believer in doing exactly as the authorities tell you. I mean, he's a staunch pastor, so I mean, Christians are used to having an authority, a higher authority that they answer to. And so this fell right in line with how he thought medically. But I had spent, at that time, I was already beginning to kind of start to see a little bit of the bubble that I was in, the religious bubble that I was in, probably around the age of 38, 39. So a few years before I had cancer, I took some magic mushrooms. I started smoking cannabis and these kind of things. And these kind of things will pull you out of the matrix. They will break down the bad habits and the indoctrinated thinking that you have in your head. And when you begin to do that and start asking questions, it starts to become very clear that you're caught up in some type of mechanism. And so I realized, before I realized caught up in Christianity and Christian mechanism, I realized I was caught up in a medical system. And so when I contracted cancer, I knew I'm not going to take the advice of any of these doctors. I mean, I've seen so many people die of chemotherapy. I mean, they die of the treatment before they actually die of the disease. And I had seen that so many times that I was like, well, I'm not going to be one of those people. And I'm not going to fall into that trap. And so a couple of weeks later, I was sitting in the living room of my father and my mom. I was there with my dad. And I told him that I had cancer. It was a heavy moment, dude. I mean, I was a real essential part of the church. My dad and I had started it together. And I was very close and all this kind of stuff. And so this whole thing with cancer was going to throw a monkey wrench in everything. And so Dad looks at me and he goes, well, what are you going to do about this? How are you going to treat it? And I said, well, I'm going to begin by doing Gerson therapy. And I'm thinking about going to an acupuncturist. And I want to talk to Mom's. My mother saw a naturopathic doctor. She suffers with migraines. And so she is allergic to a lot of the migraine headaches that they use. So she had already gotten in touch with this gal named Danette Goodyear, who is a naturopathic doctor. And I said, I'm going to get in touch with Annette. And though my dad loves Annette and loved these people that I was going to be involved in, he said, well, that's not going to work. And I said, well, I'm not going to go down the Western medicine path. And he was really disturbed with that. That really, really upset him. And so he was very loving and kind. And at that time, he said, okay, we'll do everything we can to support you. We'll do all that you can. I was going to take a leave of absence from work to fight it, because Gerson therapy requires quite a bit of work. You're consuming 20 pounds of vegetables a day in juices, and there's a lot of work that's involved in doing that. There's a whole nother host of therapies and disciplines that you have to engage in. So I knew that I was going to be tied up. So about 2 days later, he came to my house, and I'm right in the middle of my therapies and stuff. And he sat down on the couch in front of me, and he was really disturbed. And he looked at me and he said, Chuck, he said, I really believe and support you. And I really want you to know that whatever you choose to do, I really love you, but I really think you're making a huge mistake here. And I think you're going down the wrong path. And I think you're really going to be in trouble. And then he said something I'm not going to repeat because I love my father too much, but he said something that really cut. It really hurt. And at that point I knew, and I realized I'm really on my own. And if there's anything that people realize when they realize that the whole world has lied to them, is that they realize that they're alone, because their religion has lied to them, their medical doctors lied to them, and their education has lied to them. And so this feeling of isolation begins to take over you, and you have to find an inner strength. And so from that point on, it was a matter of finding it within myself, because I was detaching from Christianity at the same time. So at the same time that I was totally detaching from the medical industry, I'm now totally detaching from not only the religious quote unquote industry, but that's what's supporting me and my family. I mean, my job is working at a church. To work at a church, unless you're going to be a coward and a hypocrite and you're just going to live this second life, and you're not going to be doing something that, or you're not going to be believing in the same way that they believe. I mean, what kind of a person are you? And so this was beginning to all surface without my planning it in the middle of my fighting cancer. And so this went on for about 8-9 months as I was fighting cancer. And around September, October, I had, the tumor in me had turned black and was dead. And so I had to go in and have a surgery and have it removed. And so I went into the surgery and had it removed. And I went and got tested, and that was it. And so I had basically spent that 8 months destroying the system that was in place, that was growing in me, that was eating me and killing me, this tumor. And so there was all kinds of metaphors within that, in that you have something, when you have cancer, you have something inside of you that's eating you. It's eating you alive. And it has no apologies, and it's not going to stop. You will have to do something about it, or it will kill you. And so beliefs work the same way. And this is what I realized, in that beliefs eat at you inside. They eat at your discernment. They eat at your tolerance. They eat at your awareness. And so because all of this was going on and I was seeing all these metaphors and all this was happening, this gentleman named Dr. Joseph Campbell came into my life, who was this amazing, amazing teacher. And I watched this series that he did called Mythos. And it completely transformed my thinking. And it got me out of this idea, the cult idea in Christianity, which is we're right and everybody else has to join in this band, join in this group, and then everything's okay, because a Christian believes that every single person on earth should be a Christian and the world will be a better place, which is how a cultist thinks. But the Christian isn't aware of that because they think they're right. And so Joe came along, and he very gently and kindly showed me that what I was believing was a lie, was false. The power that is within us doesn't come from outside us; it is within us. And Christianity teaches that you are dirty inside, that you are inherently flawed, and that you will be flawed until the day you die, until you believe in this system. And so they believe in this idea that you have to pull in this something outside of yourself in order to be this kind person, in order to be this gracious person, in order to understand the world. And Joe helped me understand that actually it doesn't come from without and outside of you. It comes from within you. You look inwardly to understand these things. You look inwardly to trust. And that's exactly what Christianity does. It teaches you not to trust yourself because you're a sinner, and a sinner can't be trusted. And so all the psychology is backwards. This is what I found out. It's all backwards. And so you're constantly looking outside of yourself. You're constantly in conflict with yourself, and you're constantly trying to understand the world through this conflictive means. Whereas you're trying to beat this evil, you're trying to overcome all these people that aren't Christians. And it's this big battle. And it only reinforces the very thing that all of these institutions do to us, which is the medical industry teaches you, well, you're sick, you have to have these drugs outside of you in order to get better. You know, you don't look inwardly, you don't meditate, you don't go to acupuncture, you don't do these things to align with this inner power that you have. And so I found what became aware to me was that all of these institutions are all worshiping the same God, which is this evil force which teaches people you're dirty, you're sinful, you're weak, you need these vaccinations, you have to do these medications or you're going to die. You have to follow us. You have to do what we say or you're going to die. And it's all threat. It's all fear. And man, it has completely destroyed this society. And because you try and you go to talk to people who are religious and you try and show them this other way of thinking about themselves and this other way of seeing through nature and seeing this light that is within you that's also with nature. And dude, they will fight you. They will fight to stay in the sinner system. They will fight to stay in this Western ideology. They will fight you tooth and nail. And I found it comes between family members. I mean, my relationships with me and my father, me and my friends have suffered because of my choices. And I always think to myself, if Christianity is this loving idea, this idea of acceptance, and this idea that everyone is to be loved and cared for, why is there such incredible intolerance and resistance to people who don't buy into it? I mean, my God, I mean, they'll throw you out. And I mean, this is this self-righteousness that it puts inside of you, and you can't reach these people. So, I mean, my relationship with my father has suffered. I love him greatly. I love my father. I love my siblings. But there's this distance that's there that these belief systems put into people. And so that's why I get so incredibly passionate in what I do, because what I'm trying to do is to break that system that causes division within people, to break that system that causes division between people and nature and people and others. And I'm so passionate about doing that through psychology, not by believing in some other religion, not by believing in this other way, but through philosophy, through reason, through discernment, through showing people another way of seeing it, through word pictures. They will be able to see it themselves, because you have to see it yourself. If you don't see it yourself, you will stay lost, because you'll stay in the cycles and the word systems and the belief systems that the systems put you in. And there's no escape. There's no exit strategy. So the only way out is reason, through authenticity, and through looking people in the eye and talking to them and showing them that you care about them, not because they believe right, not because they subscribe to God, but because they're a human being, but because they have the same light within you that's within nature. And if you can reach that spot, you can awaken people, like they can awaken themselves. They can see that light, and it's transformative. And then they themselves will leave the traps of religion. They themselves will leave the traps of medicine and science, because they will see through their own discernment and their own exploration the truth. And that's exactly what I'm about. So anyway, that's a long answer to the question. But
wow. I love it. I love it. You know, I got to say, the whole Christianity thing, and you know, for me, I've butted heads with Christians more than I have, you know, maybe others, agnostics and whatnot. And it's because they don't understand the source material very well that they're addicted to. You know, I have a real, you know, kind of connection with Christ, but Christ isn't a last name. It's a title. And, you know, this whole idea of the message was always go within. It was to just, you know, when I read the Bible, and I've read it a few times, had to study it in college, but, you know, it was to discourage religion and to go within and to look at life through the eyes of a child in awe and wonder and so on. And this seems to be lost on, it reminds me of the book of Eli, when, you know, you had two people seeking the Bible, Denzel Washington, you know, preserving the Bible, and Gary Oldman's character, you know, trying to use it for power. Well, the folks that wanted it for power got it for power a long, long time ago, and religion has been perverted ever since. And all the organized religions that I've seen, Buddhist is probably I don't even know if that's a religion, it's more of a practice,
It's not, yeah,
but
it's
a practice. But the idea that it wedges a divide between you and God. You know, somehow you need an intermediary. Everything about this system in all of these religions is designed to separate you from God. And when I read, Genesis and so on, it seemed pretty evident that the original sin, if there is any, I love what you have to say about original sin, because it's foisted a hell of a dysfunction on humanity, just the concept. But it would be our fall from God, or our distance from God, or our belief that we are separate from God. I think it's tantamount to the problems that we have today. Because it's all there.
Exactly.
We're wired for this. We're made for this. But everything we have in our history is all about erasing or discouraging that. What do you think?
Yes, and the whole falling into sin, that was a concept. Okay, in my next video that I'm going to be releasing, the part 2 in my nature series, I'm going after that directly, because the whole belief in sin and the whole idea of sin has conned a lot of people into some really funny ideas about themselves and funny ideas about this planet and nature. And when about a month ago, I was watching a talk by Santos Bonacci, and he described the Gnostic understanding, or this Hermetic understanding, that the soul falls into sign. Now, we all know that light travels in waves, electromagnetic waves. Okay, that's a sine wave. And so when white light passes, let's passes through a crystal, it separates it into the rainbow. Now, you can literally say, you can see that rainbow, and you can say, okay, the blue, the green, the yellow, the red, or whatever, are tainted versions of white light. You could say that. But they're pure, but they're a tainted version. In other words, they're not white light. They've been changed. They've been transformed. They've been shifted into color. Okay. Now you can take that idea, and then you can take us. Let's say if you believe in the soul, I believe in the soul. The soul is what animates us, gives us the energy and principle within us, gives us reason and consciousness. Okay. I believe that's timeless. I believe the soul never dies. I believe the body is a carriage for the soul, and our experience is what feeds the soul. That's why the soul is there. So the soul incarnates somehow. It comes out, in my opinion, it's an aspect, a characteristic of God. Like an apple that falls from an apple tree. The apple is not the apple tree. It's a offspring of the apple tree. And that's exactly how I see us. We are an offspring of God. Okay. You can take that concept in the same way that you look at the white light going into the crystal forms it into the rainbow colors. We are essentially the rainbow that comes out of the white light that is God. And the church came along and said, that means you're dirty. That means you're tainted. You're a part of the demiurge. You see how that works. And you can take this pure idea, this beautiful light, but then you can taint it by putting something in someone's head that says, no, you're not actually God. You're something outside of God. You've fallen from God. So you're tainted. You're not actually God. And so the soul, which is actually God, the soul is then tarnished by the ideas in the mind. This is the klesha. This is the whole reason for the idea of the crucifixion, crucifying the moral, the linear ideas of yourself, the mortal ideas of yourself, and thinking that's who you are. And the cross is, the Christ's head is at the point of contention, because that is where the mind must die. The mind must die to these foolish ideas, namely that you're a sinner, namely that sin exists. Good and evil are part and parcel of the universe. The universe is composed of light and darkness. You have to have one to have the other. You have to have up to have it down. You have to have an in to have an out. Okay, you have to have a good without an evil. You won't know good without evil. You don't know white without black. All of these things are contrasts. They are not in conflict. They are contrasts. We have identified them through what the church said, which was to say these things are in battle. Good is in evil with good is in evil with good is in battle with evil. White is in battle with black. These things are opposed and fighting each other, but they're not. They're two ends of the same pole, like north and south. They're two ends of the same thing. They both source from the same energy, because when God manifests into this reality, there is both good and evil that comes out of that. That's what happens when the light passes through the crystal. You get both blue, red, yellow, orange, the whole color spectrum. You get it all. You're not going to get one or the other. And it's the same thing when we take form, when the soul manifests into material reality, this 3D space. It carries with it all the energies that are in those other spaces. And there are positive and negative energies at every layer. I don't know why people get this idea that there's supposed to be one side that wins and one side that loses. Well, then you have nothing, because you have to have an up to have a down. You have to have an in to have an out. You have to have a good to know evil. And simply the evil that is within you, the negativity that is within you, it's just a matter of amalgamating it. So if you're an angry person and you like to fight and you have all this energy to get out, you can't take that and just use that as an excuse to go beat people up. Go join a boxing ring. Go join a dojo. Direct that energy. Don't shame it. Don't try to put it away. Direct it in the right way. And so when you do what these authorities have said, which is why you've got to overcome the evil, you got to be good more than bad. You got to fight these things, and you got to fight this will that's within you that is trying to do evil. You have to fight it and go against it. And it's like, no, man. No, you're not going to answer these questions through conflict, brother. You're going to answer these questions through contrast. You're going to have to see the light and darkness that is within nature, because the skater is a damn because the forest is a damn scary place at night, but it is absolutely glorious during the day. You see what I'm saying? If I go on a trail at night in the forest, it's horrifying. But if I walk that same exact trail in the daylight, it's an unbelievably beautiful experience. Both of these energies are in nature. I am to equate them. So when I walk that dark path in the forest at night, I overcome my fears through understanding and knowledge. I overcome my fears by being prepared. It's not a battle. It's walking through there in peace. It is not a battle. It's not a fight. And so you just simply take that principle. And this is exactly what the Gnostics were saying. This is exactly what Hermeticism is saying, in that you're falling into sign. You've come into material reality. There are good and evil aspects of you. That is something to be celebrated. That is something to be enjoyed, because if we didn't have evil within us, it would be a damn boring place on this planet. And that brings variety. That brings all this counter to everything. And that's what makes the world and nature so beautiful, is that it has this dark side. And so to me, the whole thing has to be redone. You have to go about this whole thing differently than what the quote unquote authorities told us. That you have to, it's the same thing with medicine. And they think, no, you have to put all these drugs inside of you to get better. No, man. You got sick because you're sick inside. You got sick from bad belief. You got sick from poisons that you're putting in your body. You have to excise those things. You have to extrapolate those things out of your body through therapy, through acupuncture, through meditation. This is how you cleanse yourself. You're not going to cleanse yourself shoving a bunch of fucking chemotherapy into your body. That's not how it works, people. You can't do it that way. You see? And so all of this stuff bleeds together. And if you simply find the patterns, you can help people see, holy shit, I've been looking at this entirely wrong. If I approached it differently, the whole thing would clarify. Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense. You know, it's this idea of balance. It's this idea that we're so fixated on right and wrong. And from birth, we want to categorize and name and label and fit everything into boxes according to parameters that are handed to us, rather than something that's intrinsic. You don't see lions and bears and so on going to an oncologist when they have an issue. They're in harmony with nature. And this is built in, and this is how God thinks. It's not right and wrong is subjective, right? We can change the meaning of that. And I use the example of the heads rolling down the pyramids in the Mayan days. That was a good back then. That would be considered a bad for the most part now, depending on who you're hanging out with, I suppose.
Right.
But
they're difficult questions. There's no doubt about it. They're difficult questions.
But it's balance. And this is the reason when they shifted us from balance to good or bad, they shifted us from an inherent knowing as a fractal of God, which is an honor, to a shamed, exiled part of God, where,
that's right,
we are no longer seeking within, we are seeking without. We are now controllable. We are now slaves. and we are no longer in
Right.
harmony with nature. So we're not healing
Asking
ourselves.
permission, seeking approval, and accepting and expecting reproof. Those are the
Bingo.
3 lies. Asking permission, seeking approval, and expecting reproof. Those are the mindset of a slave, and that is exactly what every single religious person, Christian, is doing. They're asking God permission all the time. They're expecting reproof all the time. This is the behavior of a slave. This is the behavior of a person who's reactive, not proactive. We are not to be reactive in our lives. If you live the reactive life, you will live a life of anxiety. And if you think the answers are outside yourself, that's the path to anxiety. You look inward, and this is how you conquer anxiety. I'm sorry to interrupt, but that's exactly what you just said is exactly what I'm talking about, dude. Exactly.
Well, it's the weaponization of the endocrine system, isn't it? Just much like they do with MK Ultra, or trauma-based mind control. They have us, in this flight or fight. We are not centered. Look at our culture. There's nothing balanced about it. Everything is one side or the other. Everything is polarized. You have sides. You pick teams. You're looking for a specific outcome, whatever you align with. You're told what's good and bad. This whole feminism thing, the balance between male and female is so out of whack. People aren't even dating. We've got teenagers with erectile dysfunction. It's that bad. And it all stems from this imbalance. And I'm so happy to be able to talk to you about this because it's a hard discussion to have. And I think this is one of many. I'm thrilled to have you on the show, man.
Thank you so much.
Oh, and I want to say, and this is sort of funny when I heard you say, oh God, now I'm going to forget the quote. It was a Terrence McKenna quote, I think, about if your ontology doesn't include conflict, it's not deep enough. Yeah,
that's right. That's right. That's exactly right. It's one of the best lines of all time.
Oh God, it's so true because recently, and I've been on this path forever. I had kind of an upside down life that allowed me to be a lot freer in my thinking than a lot of folks, and I'm grateful for that. But a lot of these things that intersect, like the idea of Sitchin's work and comments on the Anunnaki versus the Book of Genesis and how all these come together, or the idea that you had Set and you had all these different examples other than Jesus Christ of a virgin birth. And the whole timeline, the death, the rebirth, all of these things, it mimics the agricultural cycle. It mimics the astronomy cycle,
astrotheology.
All of these different things. So at first that really made me think, well, we're being duped on the Jesus story, but I had a strong connection to Jesus, not a religious connection, mind you. So I was in conflict with that, but now I'm realizing the way these things are layered dimensionally, it makes perfect sense that they're echoed in all these ways. And it makes perfect sense that all of these people that came before Jesus with the same story may have existed, in the same way Jesus may have existed historically.
It's the perennial philosophy. And the perennial philosophy ties into the elementary idea of Adolf Best-John, which everyone has their own folk idea of the elementary idea. And that's the perennial philosophy. And everybody, all these cultures, but going back all the way in time, they all are pointing to the same thing, essentially, which is no thing, which is this incredible force that self-organizes, that is this light that is within us, this consciousness, this awareness that is beyond the veil. And that many cultures over time have all tried to form that into their own language, which is normal, which is good. I mean, you're going to try to bring others, you want to bring others into this notion, this idea, this sensitivity to this force. The problem is people that were greedy and wanted authority came in and wanted to take that authority that came from this inner light, and they wanted to be the moderator of it. Whereas you can only access it through us. If you only do these deeds, believe this way, think this way, say these things, that's the only way you can access it. And that right there tells you right there that it's not truth that they're doing. And as far as Jesus and these deities and these sages and so forth, I follow, there was a great idea that Campbell brought up in his Mythos series. And I mentioned it in my last video, and that is all these deities from the ancient past. So the lords and ladies of King Arthur's Round Table and the Buddhist traditions and the different gods that they have are different images of these powers. And in Hinduism, where you have basically a god for every type of attribute or characteristic in nature. And what Campbell showed me, which was so beautiful, was that these things are not outside of you. These are the principles that are within you. You have the potential of being both Bach and Hitler within you. Those principles are already within you. Those are God principles. Those are within you. And if you continue to study these figures, these deities from the past, as these external forces, as these external aspects that somehow if you pray right, somehow if you believe right, somehow if you hold the utensils right, they'll listen to you and they'll give you help or whatever, is all complete bogus, complete lie. Because all of those principles are within you already. You have those powers within you. This is the God aspect, the God consciousness that is within you. That's what your imagination is. This is God power. The imagination builds empires, builds skyscrapers, builds flying machines. This power is within you. This is a godlike power. And of course, the ruling agencies don't want all the cattle to have that idea in their mind because they won't listen. Because if you have that kind of power inside of you and you realize it, you will never listen to someone who claims to have that authority that you already have within you. You will never listen. And that's what this whole great awakening is about, is awakening people to this, because people are totally asleep. They don't realize, folks, this is within us. The culture transcends when we each transcend. Yes, there's help. Yes, there's outside forces involved. There's no doubt. But each person has a mountain of their own that they must overcome, which is all the beliefs, all the indoctrinations, all the crap that you have been pounding into your body for decade after decade after decade. Folks, that doesn't come out in a day. That doesn't come out in a week. That takes a long time to pull that stuff out. And I'm telling you, that is really, to me, that's the hang up right now with this great awakening. It's each individual. People have to break out of the spells. They have to break out of the enchantment, because man's science is enchanting. Religion is enchanting. And it's so easy to get caught up in its magic. And it's very, very difficult to leave because it doesn't want you to leave. It fights for you to stay there. And so we each have to have courage. We each have to have it within ourselves, within our discernment, to see through it. And to see past the fierce shit that they're plugging into you and telling you that it's not you. It is you. The power is inside of you. It is not something to reach out and find. It is not something to go out and get that must be bestowed to you. It is all within you. And that's what all these ancient sages, Gnostics, all these people, Buddhists, Hindus, that's what they're all saying. The ancient ones were saying before the authorities came in and said, no, we have this power. No, dude, all these ancient cultures, these people, they knew this power is within. And this is something that has to be carried throughout the generations or they will be captured. And that's what happened. We got captured. We forgot these things. We got captured. And so we have to break out, man.
That's what I think that's what Campbell laid out in The Power of Myth. And I remember reading that. I think it was like 14 years old. And the meaning of that book expands for me every time I reconsider it. But it does. It lays the map. The Power of Myth. I
love that book.
I do too. We have a good friend, Trent Shuford, that runs Healthy Beings, and he talks about ontology. And he talks about, we're humans and we tell stories. And a lot of those stories are full of shit, basically, But we have certain preferences. They're pretty ubiquitous. And if you play to those preferences or those comforts, you can manipulate us pretty easily. And most of it is an exploitation of human compassion. The way they get at you is through your compassion. Even if you're a hardened bastard, you became that through your compassion more than likely, because those are the preferred methods of manipulation, right?
Yeah, it's just extreme abuse, extreme indoctrination, extreme dissociating people from themselves, and making life this journey that like you have to navigate through this particular way of belief. And really, as nature creatures, we're just like the animals in so many ways, in that we take in the environment around us. This is how we learn. We observe the environment around us. We don't learn by someone pointing their finger at us saying, believe this, believe that. That is not how you're going to learn in this life. That, like the major things, the important things in life, the real sensitive things that feed your compassion. And these are things that you find out through observing. That's what the Buddha was doing when he went out and he saw the dead or the dying man and the starving man and these people that are suffering. He learned by identifying with those other people because they're just like him. They're humans just like he is, and they're suffering. And so this opens your eyes to, wait a minute, because the Buddha grew up in this posh castle. You know, he's got power and all this stuff. So I can relate to him in many ways. And you have to get down in the trench work. You have to get down where people really are at, or you won't be able to identify with folks. And so that's why these sages use these parables, because it relates people to suffering. It relates people that, you know what, the way you're suffering is exactly the way that they're suffering. And by talking, by working things out and seeing life through different perspectives that they can offer you and you can offer them, you can work through the suffering. You can work through these bad ideas that are inside of you. And so it's simply relating. It's simply having this relationship. And that's what Jesus was doing, the Buddha was doing, all of these gods and goddesses. They are attempting, their essence, their image is attempting to relate you to that which is already inside of you, to give you that relationship so that you can then foster it out. You can then tease it out. And then that is how real compassion comes, because compassion doesn't come because you threaten somebody. You don't love your neighbor because the Bible says if you don't love your neighbor, you're going to freaking hell, man. That is not why you're going to love your neighbor. You're going to love your neighbor because you identify with your neighbor, because you see yourself in them and you see their problems inside of you and they inside of you also. And this relates you to them. And then you can then respect them, admire them, love them, because you see yourself in them. See, this is how it all goes. And this whole way that the systems have been doing it is that you beat this into people, and that is not how you bring out compassion. It's teased out. It's fostered out through identity. So anyway, yeah.
No, it's like Buddha. I mean, you know, Buddha said life is suffering, and that's a hard pill to swallow. I don't want to join that club, but you know, but I think what he may have also said, and it would have been the same thing, is life is contrast, which is what you were talking about earlier. The idea that you know, if you truly understand the role of the suffering and that it is contrast, like the degree of pleasure that I feel in life is rooted in the degree of pain that I have felt in life. The contrast increases the depth. And so, you know, we have this concept of heaven, you know, this concept of effortlessness and so on. And I think there is something to the effortlessness, but I think without the contrast, it wouldn't be a heaven. It would be its own kind of hell. What do you think?
Yeah, the beauty, well, the beauty, yes, the beauty is in variety. And a great thing I heard a Buddhist monk say one time was that all life is a fire. All life is a fire. And fire is contrast. It's light amidst the darkness. All life is a fire. It's a burning. And that's beautiful. That's not to say life is suffering. No, it's to say that life is a fire. It's full of contrasts. And it's a fire because you must amalgamate with those contrasts. It's not easy. It's not going to be easy. Life is going to throw curveballs at you. It's going to hurt. You're going to suffer. Absolutely. But that is part of it. That's the beauty of it. In other words, there's nothing to correct. There's nothing to fix. There's nothing wrong with you. It's simply a matter of aligning to the fact that these energies are within you, and you can destroy yourself with the energies that are inside of you. And so there's a process. It's a fire. And just like the fire can warm the house, it can also burn it down. And so you are the same exact way. You can absolutely destroy your life with your gifts and your art, which could also bring you unbelievable treasures and beauty. The same energy can be used. And so this is a balance. And it's like a godlike aspect of you, this power, this imagination, this, like my whole thing when I started on YouTube, I didn't even want to. I had somebody that wrote me and they had seen a video that I'd done. They say, you have to get a YouTube channel. You have to do this. And I was totally unaware. Like, what are you talking about? Like YouTube? Why would I ever want to be on that? And so it was simply a matter of stepping into it. And I realized when I started doing it, I'm like, damn, I kind of like doing this. I kind of like sharing these opinions. And it works.
I think we can relate to that a little. Yeah.
Exactly, man. And Joseph Campbell says, where you stumble, there lies your treasure. And so I'll say this, I'll finish with this. Doing these talks and doing these videos, it's not easy. It's hard to do, but it's a joy. It's a blessing. Yep. I love doing it, but it's not easy. It's a fire. And so I'm having, when I do these videos, I'm having to contain this fire and make sure, fuck you, don't burn everything up. Just make sure you direct it in the right way so people can understand. But if you get too fired up, people won't hear you. And so it's working with the fire. Yeah. Exactly, man. Exactly, man. And so that's what it's about. And that is so peaceful when you approach life in that way. Yeah.
I was just thinking of the excellent example. Joe lost his father not too long ago, and the contrast of that upsetting the harmony, the balance, and what he knew of his former life, because it really was that kind of life changing. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you can speak to contrast quite a bit. I know Joe has grown immensely from what he learned from that experience, which was very clearly suffering. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah. Well, and also, since it happened during the COVID time, the blame and, just the indoctrination that my certain family members have, just with the medical aspect, but they didn't, since I was the oldest in the family, I learned a lot from my father, and you had to have an open mind to listen to certain things that he would say about pharmacy and business, etc. But I think it leads me to when there's three people that you said that really were pivotal in your becoming aware of the true evil that's in the world and what we're up against. Could you let the viewers know about those three people and how, what I love about you is you've said, you're not really saying anything new. You're just really maybe putting things in a way that people can hear it and digest it. So I'd love to hear more about, your awakening, because, you've learned a lot that goes against what you were taught most of your life in the last 10 or so years. So please expand on that.
Yeah, it all started with Terrence McKenna. I'm a runner. I love to run. And so you have a lot of time, because when you go out running, it takes time. And so what I started doing, and this, again, I didn't intend any of this, but I started just listening. I was listening to music for years. And so I would just run, I just blast some music and go with it. And then after a while, I'm just like, I'm just tired of always just listening to music and stuff. I want to start learning something. I want to do something with my time while I'm doing this. It isn't just music. Nothing wrong with music. I'm not putting that down. It's just I wanted to use all these hours I'm spending running, learning. So maybe listen to some books, listen to some philosophy and stuff like that. Well, one thing led to another, and I'll never forget. It was called Under the Teaching Tree. Terrence McKenna, Under the Teaching Tree, and it's a 3-part lecture. And, Terrence has this whiny, nasally voice, right? And so it caught my attention. I loved it. And it caught my attention. And this guy sat down and he started to open up a world to me that I was just totally blind to. And he was unapologetic. The thing I loved about Terrence was that he gave you permission to be a heretic. He fully embraced the idea of thinking differently, going against the grain, going against the authority, all this kind of stuff. So it's really healthy. It's really healthy dialogue to start thinking differently. So this went on for a number of years. And then it was amazing timing. But then right about that time is when I got cancer. And then while I was in the middle of cancer, like right in the midst of cancer, is when I started listening to Joseph Campbell. And he did a series called Mythos. And the Mythos series talks about this whole aspect of God, this whole aspect of ultimate reality, but it is not in a religious context. And this is the first time I had ever heard of God outside of a religious context. Like, you didn't have to believe in any kind of belief system to still believe in God. And that was foreign to me. You got to understand, I was a virgin Christian, meaning just no other thought, no other belief ever went through my head, like no Buddhism, no Hinduism, not even different sects within the Christian context, like Baptist, Protestant. I wasn't even sure the differences. I was so evangelical. This is how small my world was. And so Joe came in and he started having these beautiful metaphors and these beautiful examples of compassion and these beautiful examples of loving one another. And I'm like, holy God, like I had never realized, and again, this is my innocence. I had never realized, man, you can have all these experiences in life and you don't have to have Jesus. Like, you can have all these incredible understandings and all of this depth in your life, and you don't have to be a Christian to have it. And see, I had always thought, like, that's the first step. Christianity is the first step. And so Joe further took this idea of resisting authority, but Joe brought in this love side that was lacking in McKenna, because McKenna is, I'm not saying he's not loving, but I'm saying McKenna is very science oriented. He's very scientific and he's very, very good at explaining things in great detail. But Terrence doesn't get into symbolism like saying Alan Watts or Joseph Campbell. He doesn't get into all of the symbology and so forth. He gets into the science that was behind alchemy. He gets into what they were actually doing down in the dirty with their hands. So Campbell was another flavor. And then finally, after I'd recovered from cancer and after I was out of all of that, I began to listen to Alan Watts. And I'll just say to anyone, if you haven't listened to these three guys, that order that I just said, McKenna, Campbell, and then Watts, for me, it was a really good ladder, because Watts is up in this level of philosophy that if you don't have some groundwork in symbolism and science, he's going to leave you pretty quick. And so I found that the groundwork that I had done in McKenna and his work in science, and then symbology that came out of, or symbolism that came out of Joseph Campbell, really supported me as I went into these larger concepts that Watts walks into. Because his work, I found, was the most in-depth as far as philosophy and Buddhism and really tearing apart the etymology of these belief systems. And Campbell was more of this perennial philosophy that all of these belief systems are teaching a similar philosophy, a similar elementary idea, but they're going about it in this incredibly beautiful way that each culture in their own folk ideas present to you. And so it really worked for me. And for those that are just waking up, it really worked for me to take baby steps, to not take on a whole bunch of massive philosophers and just start reading a ton of books and all this kind of stuff, but take it one book at a time. Like read 1984. That's a great book that will help begin to break up your thought pattern and your process. Read The Way of Zen by Alan Watts. Yeah. It begins to open up your basics. And The Taboo Against Knowing Who You Are is another great book by Alan Watts. Huge. These books, if you just take them one at a time, for me, taking them one piece at a time, one book at a time, I was able to work through it, because when I read a book, I got to read the page over and over again because I'm not a fast reader. And so it helps me to stay focused. I meet these people that are reading like 4 and 5 books, nothing wrong with that, but they're reading like 4 and 5 books at a time. I can't do that. It distracts my attention too much. I do better when I focus in on one book, 2 books, and I really tear it apart and get into it and then move on to the next book. And I was just fortunate in my path that I took the path of McKenna and Campbell than Watts, because it really worked for me. And to me, that's just nature. That's just nature.
No, that hierarchy makes a lot of sense, because and I don't know if you remember the quote, but McKenna said, "It's just going to keep getting weirder and weirder and weirder."
You said that, yeah.
Until we start talking to each other about it. So what a perfect gateway, because Watts that's a head full, I mean, and you're going to read it and it's going to mean one thing, and then you're going to read it again in 6 months or a year, and it's going to mean something a little different, maybe. Yes. But yeah, there's a tremendous amount of depth. Those three are I think vital, but
you can't exhaust them.
No,
you can't exhaust those guys.
I don't want to leave the audience too out there, because they may or may not be familiar with the source material, but the reason I started sending your videos out to so many people that I know, and many of you probably received those links from me, was because I've studied this stuff for a long, long time, and I've never heard anyone put it together in such a cohesive way that was so approachable. And what I thought we could do, I mean, each one of those videos, and I highly suggest you see those, the God Eaters series, and we'll put links below. It's, I think a really good way to make that meaningful for folks is to let them know how that history that they may or may not know about, most people don't, the Khazarian history, how that is so directly applicable to what we're experiencing right now and this power struggle, because it's very transparent at this moment. And if you have a grasp of the material, you can see it, just as plain as day. And if you don't, you're probably pretty confused and probably a little bit terrified, or worse, maybe apathetic. So yeah, what do you think?
One of the key things to remember is that you're not going to be able to resolve the questions that you have within the indoctrination that you've received, because there is no exit strategy for getting out of, quote unquote, the medical system. You will have to do that work. There is no exit strategy for getting out of Christianity. You will have to do that work, or any religion. You will have to do that work. And so, in other words, for years, and this is great, I'm so glad this came up. For years, I took mushrooms and stuff back in, let's see, this was when I was mid-30s, and I was trying to equate the experience I was having on mushrooms with Christianity. And so I was trying to put Jesus in there. I was trying to make it work, Christianity and being a sinner. And how does this relate to my forgiveness and resurrection and thinking differently? I was constantly trying to use the religion to make sense of what the plants were teaching me. That's a big mistake. That's a big mistake, because your indoctrination is not these religions don't want you to leave them. They want you to stay forever and die in them. And what these plants come along and what nature comes along and says is, you don't want to be in that cage. You want to get out of that cage. Nature's screaming at it. You want to get out of that belief system, because that belief system is keeping you from experience. It's keeping you ignorant. It's keeping you resistant. It's covering your mind with klesha, and you're believing these lies and indoctrinations that have formed this matrix world that you're in. And nature's saying, you got to get out of that brotherhood. You got to escape. And you're not going to be able to do that reading your Bible. You're not going to be able to do that reading the Bodhisattva. You're not going to be able to read that reading the Egyptian Book of the Dead. You're going to only be able to do that by reading all of them, reading all of these philosophies and all of these pictures. And then you'll begin to say, okay, I see the common patterns, and these are the ones that make sense to me. And it is through that patterning that you'll find your way out, because the way you'll find your way out is not going to keep you in the system. It's like if you break up with somebody after a long relationship, you've learned a ton from that relationship. So when you get in another relationship, you're not going to make the same mistakes if you're a wise person. And it's the same thing when you leave a religion. You are leaving a relationship. You are leaving a spiritual relationship that you have always depended on. And it's just like a breakup. And you will not be able to have a healthy relationship outside of that relationship, holding the same values you had in that relationship. You have to be willing to abandon them. You have to be willing to leave those values and find new values based on no harm, based on compassion, but don't require you to be in the belief system. And so this is what nature is doing. And the way out is not going to come by reading additional verses or by memorizing certain books and all that kind of stuff. Folks, you're going to have to find it on your own. And it comes from amalgamating all of these different contrasts. Here we come back to contrast. It's not by fighting battles. It's by amalgamating contrasts that you're going to find understanding. Seriously, if you're going to try to find understanding through battles, you're just going to stay in war. You're going to be in battle with yourself, in battle with others, in battle with beliefs, and you will always be in a state of inflammation. So the way out is through nature. The way out is through nature plants, through nature medicines, through the plant kingdom, through meditation, acupuncture, study, philosophy. It's a fire, and you have to be a part of that burning. It's not just going to be handed to you, and nobody wants a handed life. Nobody wants a silver spoon life. Nobody, because nobody respects that. You want a life that you've merited. You want a belief or an understanding of the world that you've merited because you've gone out and delved it yourself and found understanding within yourself for it. Then you have something to stand on. You're not trying to take someone else's enlightenment and apply it to yourself, because, dude, it doesn't lead to your enlightenment. It leads to theirs. And that's a dead end for you. You have to find it within yourself. And Dr. Campbell talks about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think, we can put all of this material under required reading because it's awesome stuff. But I think the function it's fulfilling ultimately is that it forces you to go within. It forces you're forced to work this stuff out against your own metal in a very deep way. And if you're able to do that, you don't really need to read any of this more than, I remember when I was a kid, I felt a very deep connection to God. And I felt a very deep rejection of anyone telling me how to do that. And that has served me well my whole life. But I understand the obstacles that most people have against that. I just happen to be born into a situation where it worked for me. But I think it's all about the going within and all the contrast you can feed yourself with the works of, all these men that we've talked about. I think that'll really stimulate that in you. But it's this already. It's more of a remembering than it is a learning. I think it's really more of a remembering. It's a knowing who you are deeply.
Yes, the common thread, and you'll find it in those three guys, Watts, McKenna, and Campbell. All of these three guys, if you study their life and go back to when they're young, all of these guys broke out of the systems early. I'm always jealous of them. That's why I always revere these guys, because they woke up so much earlier than me. I was in my 30s late 30s into my 40s before I really started waking up. And I'm always, quote unquote, not really, but I'm always ashamed of that. I wish I would have woken up early, because those guys, because they woke up so early, it's like learning an instrument when you're young. You have such an advantage to someone who tries to pick it up when they're older, because these brain connections, you know, happen when you're little. And so I always admire people, like you just said, when you were very young, you had this sense of God. See, my sense of God always came through the religion. And I had to completely relearn this whole thing, because I wasn't ever given the chance to have that sense, because by the time I was 4, my parents were telling me I was a sinner and that I needed to accept Jesus into my life, and that God would only hear me if I was a Christian. You know, when you hear that when you're 4, then that's your concept of God. I mean, it will never leave that concept until you're broken out of it like a car accident. And so
Right.
I'm always envious of guys like you. It does, man. It does. And you're so much better off when you learn this stuff earlier, because it's hard to learn this stuff when you're in your 30s and 40s. And that's, I think, what a lot of people are doing right now. It's rough.
Right. It's right. So, but the beautiful thing about what you're saying is there's so many people, and think of the people in their 50s, 60s, 70s, that maybe, you know, hearing this for the first time, stumbling across your page. Can you imagine the person that's like, yeah, I heard about this Chuck Swindoll, and maybe, just maybe, I'm just thinking of this right now, they go to your dad's page for usual, and they're like, wait, who's this Chuck Swindoll? They stumble across that. They're in their 60s or 70s, and then they're like, wait a second, this actually makes more sense. I have to ask, what are some of the stories that you've gotten, the responses from people that, and it may be only a handful, that hear your stuff, they want to absorb your page, and they're like, oh my God, this makes way more sense. There's got to be some people that didn't go through the three gentlemen that you've, you know, Watts and Campbell, and they're just stumbling across you. And like, do you have some feedback on what people might have discovered from listening to you?
You know, it's been really interesting. That is a very touchy subject. I've gotten, initially, when I first started the site, I had a lot of emails come in of people that were really angry with me, because they felt that I was doing a disservice to my father, that I was angry, that I was doing this out of revenge, that I had something against Christianity and these kind of things. And it took a little while. It took some time, and for me to release some more videos, for people to see that I'm not doing this out of anger. I'm not doing this out of spite. I didn't leave Christianity angry and cussing out my pastors. It's not at all what happened. And I actually had, and I'll say this freely, I actually had a very lovely life growing up in Christianity. I had a beautiful experience in the religion, no doubt. It's just, it's limited. It's a limited experience. It's a contained experience. It's a beautiful experience if you stay within it. But you stay within it. You're not going to experience a larger world.
It's like a fishbowl.
Yes. And so people who are in the position that I was in before I left, where they're like, I'm having this great and beautiful experience in Christianity and with God. Why are you saying to leave? Like, what is that about? And so there's a process. Something has to happen within the person. They're not going to get it from me or watching my videos. When the person finds my videos that already is like, I'm not so sure, or, you know, it doesn't make sense that we have this great awakening and every single person in the world is going to have to be a Christian before we all awaken. Like, that doesn't make any sense, because I know the Eastern world, none of those people believe in Jesus. And so, like, this doesn't make any sense. A person is going to have a question like that, something in their mind that's teasing them, like, I'm not really sure. And then when they hear my videos and see my work, I can talk reason and sense to them, because I'm not angry. So I'm not a threat to them. I'm coming in and I'm offering them reason and sense, just saying, hey, if you look at it from this perspective, you know, it actually is a conditional love that the Bible is teaching. I know it tells you that it says it's unconditional, but it's actually extremely conditional. And here's why. Here's some perspectives you can look at that will show you it is a love that's under condition. And then you can reason with them. But the folks that come in and they're actually trying to find my dad, and they find me instead, they just get flat angry. They're sickened with what I've done. So it always takes a person, and this is one of the reasons why I like it that my father's the same name as me, because it takes a person some effort to find me. They can't just find me in a quick search. They're going to have to search. And this is the person that's looking for answers. This is the person that's like, wait, no, that's his dad. I'm looking for this other guy that was saying this stuff. They're intentionally trying to find me. And that's the person that's ready. You know, they say that quote, the student finds the guru when it's time, and the guru simply shows up and the student is ready. And in many ways, the Christian is ready for me when they've had this moment, this epiphany in their head that just says, wait a minute, there's more to this story. And then I show up and it's like, oh, here's a perspective that I can chew on for the next 6 months. And let me see if I can make sense of it. That's where I come in. That's how folks find me. And it's really great. It actually works out okay that most people find my dad and don't find me. Because I'm not in this to sell anything. I'm not trying to promote a product. I'm not trying to get someone to believe something or do something. I'm totally in this for the joy and passion and love for others. Seriously, that's totally why I'm here. So I have all these agendas pushing me saying, you got to get your name out. You got to get out from under your dad. You got to get this big impression. You got to pay all this money for ads. No, man. People are going to find me when they're ready to find me. And then it's beautiful. It's totally beautiful at that point.
Well, again, I don't think there's a necessity to leave Christianity necessarily. I mean, I kind of rejected organized religion altogether from an early age, and I've never really been embroiled in any of them. But I remember my father telling me about the usefulness of Christianity, for many, and did not discount it early on. And and I've studied theology and I've studied the teachings, and I find myself, surprised when a lot of the folks that are really devout have a lesser command of the knowledge of the information. It's a hell of a commitment to commit your entire spiritual self, which I think is, a much bigger part of you than maybe you think, to one ideology. I think it is an inside job, and you can incorporate that. You can incorporate a lot of different ideas, but ultimately the real truth, and tell me what you think, but ultimately the real truth is just resting within. When you think about the, I keep referring to this because it's such an awesome thing. 1 gram of DNA can hold a petabyte of data. Like, imagine the information that is stored in your DNA, and yet science calls it junk DNA. 98% of it.
Yeah, and it's not. We know that that's been turned off. We know that we've been deprogrammed genetically. Yeah. We know that. We see the chromosomes that have, or the chromosome that's been adjusted. So we see that. We know that we've been altered, and we know that we have been purposefully maligned so that we wouldn't remember, so that it would be difficult to remember these, to bring these things about. Because again, this harkens back, we say earlier, you cannot control an awakened public. An awakened public will not bow to you. And so they had to literally taint our DNA to get this light within us to stop. They literally had to pull us down to just using 5% of our brain to stop this light. And even with just the 5% that we have, it's still penetrating through, and we're going to experience the Great Awakening. And what I want to say in addressing that, you said that you could still be a Christian and this whole awakening thing. That's fine. I'm not going to question that. What I am going to say is, though, if you continue to adhere to the theology that is inside Christianity and how it teaches that you're a sinner, and how it teaches that you must be rectified in order to be okay with God, there's going to be an extremely disillusioning moment for you when we pass through into the Great Awakening and everyone finds out that these were cons, and everyone finds out that this isn't a good idea. Now the good thing would be to start now exploring that, but it's going to be horrendous, and many will be like this. It will be horrendous when they realize how much that stuff, how much the symbolism that is in Christianity has simply been a tainted version of astrotheology, and the whole death and rebirth, and the whole sin and atonement thing. See, these are all lies. And so a person, if they cling to them, that's fine. But if they cling to them into the Great Awakening, they will be disillusioned. They eventually will have to release them, or they will stay disillusioned, because the Great Awakening is going to be a larger world than the Christian world. The Christian world is a 3,000-year-old Semite world full of Romans. That's the Christian world. And the doctrine and theology that they're working with is 2,000-year-old doctrine and theology. It does not apply to the current modern day. And I know that Christians hate hearing that, and they say, no, God is timeless, the doctrine is timeless, you cannot say those things, good and evil must be put down, this whole thing. I get it, because they're indoctrinated. But you've got to understand, that's a limited, tiny world. It's a theological Western image world that came out of Western astrotheology. That's where it came from. And it holds you there. So that's fine. But when we go into the Great Awakening, understand you are in a cage. You're in a cage. You can deny it all you want. You can say it's right all you want, but you are in a cage, because you can only have so many experiences. And the experiences that are available outside that cage are only going to be available to you when you relinquish this idea that you're a sinner, this idea that you're fallen, because you're not fallen. And that falls into the whole falling into sign thing that I'm going to get into in my next video.
Yeah, well, full disclosure, just to clarify, when I made that statement, I was encouraging people to explore these things. Oftentimes when you tell them that they have to abandon all that they've known to do so, they tend to just reject it offhand, and then they never get the intro. I think that's kind of a byproduct of exploring things a little further, but it's not a necessity to, it's not a one over another. It's just a wider understanding. It's a depth of understanding. And if you're seeking that,
I've tried.
Yeah. I've never been part of a religion. I've never been part of a religion, but I've studied most of them.
Yeah. Oh, so you have never been a Christian or anything like that?
No. I mean, I don't know. I was baptized Catholic, but I don't know if that makes you I got the merit badge. I went through the catechism and all that, but never practiced.
But you didn't shape your life around it.
No, my father was an intellectual and a PhD and agnostic, and my mother was a Catholic, but one of those Catholics that, I don't think she ever read the Bible, kind of a thing. It was just what she was taught and just how you live a good life. And so between the two of them, my father always encouraged me to do my own thinking, and I always have, and I'm grateful to him.
Yeah, and you know what? And here's a good point, and this resonates with what you're just saying. You can't walk up to a 6-year-old and say to a 6-year-old, hey, I want you to use your heart when it comes to sharing suckers or when it comes to this or that, doing the right thing. They have to be fostered, okay? And so there's nothing wrong with being raised in a religious context, because you have to have some type of moral compass as you grow up, and that's something that develops as you age. And so it is helpful as a young child to have these theologies, to have these ideas, these rules that you stay within, because you don't have enough discernment and life experiences to make good enough decisions, and you might end up ruining your life simply because you didn't have some form of cage that's holding you in. But, and this is straight out of Watts's teaching and Dr. Campbell's teaching, you must dislearn what you learned growing up. You must unlearn those things, because to become an adult, you must release those that kept you as a child. You must release those philosophies and ideas that kept you a child. And so when you become an adult, you must break out of these rules and regulations and authorities that you have always answered to. Again, asking permission, seeking approval, and expecting reproof. That's how a slave relates to God. And so you have to break out of these permissive, asking permission and always seeking. And is it okay that I do this? Is it okay that I do this? Does that verse say it's okay? Did Jesus say it's okay? This is how a child behaves. That's not how an adult behaves. As a 30-year-old, you're not calling your folks and saying, hey, mom and dad, how do you guys think about my doing this? Hey, mom and dad, I'm 50 years old, but I need you to give me permission for this. This is exactly what people are doing spiritually. And it's not going to work in a Great Awakening situation, because this is a higher level of thinking in the Great Awakening. You are thinking past these small worlds that these indoctrinations have put people in. You're going to have to walk into a larger world in a larger context. And so in the same way, you must break from your childhood indoctrination. You must do the same thing with your Great Awakening. You must break out of the indoctrinations that carried you through up to this point now. And now we're going to step into a more responsible, a more self-guided existence, not guided by the authorities, not guided by a particular book, but guided within oneself, the inner compass that we all have that must be fostered through discernment, through work, through intelligence and working and knowledge and all these kind of things, symbolism that align us to identity. And this is how a mature society transcends. A society does not mature believing in the things they believed as children. And that's what all of these large authorities, these ruling agencies, the science, the medicine, the religion, that's what they want. They want us all children, thinking like children, reactive like children, behaving like children, not as self-thinking, self-directed adults. It's a larger concept.
Very well said. I just want to say, so we've got about 300 people watching right now. And I just want to say, first of all, thank you guys for being here. If you could all hit the like button, that would help get this out to more people. And also, I know that Chuck is going to put this on his YouTube.
I am.
So if you want to split this up at all, this might be the halftime. I don't know how long we're going to go. So I just wanted to get that out to people. It's really important because we want people to find Chuck. And in fact, what's been really cool is to watch your subscribership grow about 6,000 people in the last week or so, and that your audio,
crazy, man.
Yeah, your audio, your entire audio book. This is where I'm leading with this. You've written a book and you've narrated it. And your entire audio book is on your YouTube channel. And I will say this out of concern that some people have said about your page. Are you going to put this either on Rumble or something? Because I have a feeling your YouTube page might start growing, and then you might start like we do, getting strike. I mean, I hope that doesn't happen. But anyway, what are you? That's so cool that you put your whole audiobook on your YouTube page.
Hey, thanks. Yeah, thank you. I wanted it available, and I wanted it readily available for folks so anyone can come and hear it. And absolutely, the information needs to be spread around. To be honest with you, the reason why I'm not on multiple channels is because my computer is over 25 years old, and so I can't even load sites. A lot of the sites, it's just I'm technically challenged. So when I get around to that, when I get around to replacing my gig and replacing this stuff, I'll definitely get onto Rumble, and I'll definitely open up my platform. Yes, you're exactly right. It is a huge risk. Yes, they could shut me down. Yes, absolutely. And I don't know what to say other than that. I'm going to do something about it as soon as I can. No worries.
If you want to park some of your catalog on our channel, you're welcome to do so, just so it gets a build up. But or maybe we can help you.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to see you. Like, I even had to get a new computer because just rendering it wouldn't have even worked on my 2012 Apple. I got a newer one, but yeah, well, because the way you're doing this, like, I mean, and I love that you're so organic about it. But people are looking for authenticity, and that's what you're bringing to the table. And so, yeah, you might. I just want to make sure none of your work gets lost because it's so valuable. Like, if people want to learn a massive amount of what's going on, just go to Chuck's YouTube page and just start watching any of his videos. They're amazing to learn from.
Well, this is vital. I mean, this is the most vital information. Like what helps me to really understand what's going on in the world with culture, like we were just talking about everybody being infantilized, knowing why is a great way to recognize it when it's happening all around you. It helps you understand the people around you, how their reactions to you, family members that are, sick and tired of your bullshit, whatever it might be. This information it's so core, and I really want to share it. And you've done so with I don't know, grace and humility, but that's why I kind of wanted to talk to people about why the world is the way it is with regard to this information, because most folks, either they don't know what the Khazarian Mafia is, or they roll their eyes or cast aspersions or whatever if you bring it up, not because they know anything about it, but because they were programmed to react that way. And this is important stuff. This is why they infantilize everyone. This is why all the weapons they're using against us are focused on division. And it's a spectacular effort they put forth. But why so much division? Because if we come together, that's it. That's all that we need to do.
Yeah. There's a great Sun Tzu philosophy, which is there's strength in numbers. And that's really, at the end of the day, there's strength in numbers, and we basically outcount all of them. And so that's why what you just said, this stuff is so important, because as a bunch of infantile people, as a society, we're not any good to anyone else or to ourselves or anyone else. But an awakened society, a mature society, that's power, that's strength. We're going interstellar. I mean, it's just a matter of time, because we have that potential within us. And I believe, okay, I'll go out on a limb here. I firmly believe that med beds are going to basically extend people's lives, if hundreds, if not thousands of years. I mean, they're already doing consciousness transfers with bodies. And so I think if you're basically between the age of 50 and 80 at this point, you're going to catch the end of the med beds. Med beds are going to heal folks. And for the next 20 years, they're going to sharpen the technology. And eventually, I think everyone's going to basically be about 25 years old and live for as long as you wish. Okay, that philosophy, that society is a different society than a society that we have right now. And there is a different context. There's a different cosmology that's required for people that are living 1,000 years. This is an entirely different world. And we are not ready for that yet. This is right now what's happening. Educating, learning, growing, expanding, getting out of the indoctrination is what's required to go interstellar, to go and live 1,000 years. Because you release our society right now, interstellar, we're going to destroy other planets because we're crazy in the way we think as a society and how indoctrinated we all are. We need to grow up. We need to mature. And that is exactly why this turnover is taking so long. Because when that technology kicks off and people start de-aging and they start getting healthy and having all kinds of energy and all kinds of financial means to be able to do it, because I think that there's going to be a financial reset. This is a society that has tremendous influence and power, and they need to be ready. It's sort of like if you're 10 years old and you inherit $10 million from your parents, you're probably going to destroy your life. Right. But if you're 80 years old, you're going to use it wisely. You'll be much wiser with it. And it's the same thing, man. We have that power in this mind here. And those med beds are going to start to change our DNA and turn on the stuff that's been turned off. And we have got to get out of this psychosis that we've been in, religious, scientific psychosis that we've been in for decades, if not thousands of years. And that is all part of this. That's why the med beds are delayed. That's why the Great Awakening is delayed, is because we have to wake up as a culture and as a society. And this is how we do it, having conversations like this and making videos like this so that people will start to wake up and realize, wait a minute, the world is bigger than the religion I was taught. I got to grow up. I got to do something about it.
Well, most of the limitations that we suffer from, we put on ourselves, but we're coming, I mean, everything we know about the world comes from a 2-strand, 3D perception of things. When we step into something other than that, I think it's going to change. I mean, we're stuck in this linear time, cause and effect, problem, solution, reaction, Hegelian, kind of a cycle. And the last few years, you've watched the trauma cycle. It's just boom, boom, boom. Like they hit right on time to keep us in a traumatized flight or fight, endocrine reaction kind of state.
Well, I heard that you can even bounce time. That's part of the whole Donald.
Sure, we can too.
Yeah, well,
we can too, right?
Yes, it's absolutely enormous. Absolutely enormous what you just talked about. That is absolutely critical. Absolutely enormous. Yeah.
Imagine a 12-strand perspective.
Well,
imagine adding a plane or two of dimensional perception to this.
Well, I gotta ask. So, Chuck, how do you see this awakening going? Like, someone told me the other day, and this was really interesting to me, that I've been talking about this whole NFL being rigged thing, and I put something on TikTok, and there was this one guy that you could tell he's a sports fan, and he was talking about how the colors of the next year's Super Bowl, they have the winners in there, and that the winners' color is smaller than the losers. But then someone else told me that the Ravens were supposed to win, but the White Hats got involved, and that the score of the Chiefs beating the Ravens was 17-10. So that was it. So what we're watching is these two teams are a rematch of the 2020 Super Bowl. So it's like a time bounce. And I said, well, what else are we going to see? Well, they said it's like a correction for the election as well. And so if that's the case, I mean, it was kind of like, okay, what is going on with the NFL? Why are we seeing some of this stuff? How was this rigged? What does this mean? So, but that being said, whether someone relates to that or not, how do you see this awakening unfolding? I mean, do we see a shift happening now where things are going to start escalating a lot more quickly, or what do you see?
I do think there'll be some more escalation to things. I do think it's going to be a process. You can't stop the Titanic on a dime. It takes about a mile to stop that thing. And so it's a society and a culture that's been living for thousands of years with bad science and religion. It's going to take a little while. And so I think the Great Awakening is going to be a process. And we are in that process now. And it's organic. I believe it's going to be fully organic. And so it's just going to grow as the culture grows. So as we wake up, as people like you and me, and folks out there that are doing our best to just shine a different light, to show a different perspective, and for others to hopefully catch on to some of that light, see things differently and begin to grow. I think it's going to be natural like that, just like the immune system in your body. You're exposed to a disease or whatever, and so you get the disease and you're fighting it. And some people get over the disease faster than others. Some people, it takes them 2 or 3 weeks to get over it. Some people are over it in a day or two. Some people are over it overnight. Some people have it for a year. It's the same thing with your mind. And when you have a diseased mind, some people, it helps to rip the Band-Aid off, man. Show them the gallows, show them hung, show them the whole thing, and they're good. Other people, like my folks, would be like, you got to be very, very gentle. Like you would have to walk them through it extremely slowly. And so the process, because it's for all of us, it's for society, it's going to cater to each one of us, and it's going to take time. So I think I don't think it's going to be a flip in the sense like, hey, this big event happened, and a week later the entire world woke up. I think it's going to be events that wake up societies in waves. It's not going to happen all at once, and it really takes our participation, dude. It really takes people like you and me. It really does. People have to step up. People that are gifted in communication, people that are gifted in knowledge and understanding, people that are educated and have a way of communicating that to folks. They need to make videos. This is how it's going to happen. It's not going to come from mainstream. It's not going to come from some authority above. It's going to come from within the society, within the culture itself, each one of us waking up, because we can identify with each other. I can't identify with the president. I can't identify with these leaders that are over tens of millions of people. I can't identify with them, but I can identify with you, and I can identify with another dude on Twitter. I've got a bunch of guys on Twitter that now I interact with and stuff, and I can identify with. They're just like me in many ways. And so this is what builds it. This is what causes it to happen. It is a growing thing. And in this way, we can take ownership. That's what's so important, is that we can take ownership of this. In other words, hey, we did the work. I did the work. You did the work. They did the work. Each one individual. And then we merit this great awakening. In the same way, you have this idea of a company in your head. So, man, you work hard at nights. You work hard, taking classes and stuff on the side. And over years and years and years, you build this thing. And finally, you have this amazing company. But it took you half your life to do it. But that's exactly what makes it so beautiful. Man, that's what makes you love it so much. It's because, man, I put my blood, sweat, and tears in this motherfucker. And I built this from nothing. And then no one can take it from you. It's like this incredibly valuable thing that you love and adore and cherish. And it's the same thing with awakening. When a person awakens on their own, they realize, oh my God, my mind is so fucking beautiful. This is incredible. I'm just realizing how much power I have within, how much power I have in my mind. And this changes the world, dude. It doesn't come from some guy up top of the thing preaching at you saying, you got to do this and that. No, man, it's going to come from within you. And then you can't stop a person that's merited their life like that. You can't hold them down. You can't ever stop them or convince them otherwise.
So well said.
Yeah, and within that, you see the oneness, and I've talked about this before, but when you can look into someone else's eyes and see God, it's pretty amazing. And then when you notice that they recognize that in you, I mean, that changes worlds. It absolutely does. And if we're all on the same page on that, for the most part, doesn't have to be all of us, but, if a high percentage of us are vibing like that, where we respect each other, because of our nature, our shared nature, I mean, think of all the problems that eliminates. And it's so attainable. It's so achievable. We don't even need to raise our voices in this. We just say no to the bullshit, and we say yes to each other. And I know I sound really hippy dippy, but there's a lot of wisdom in this. I've really thought this through. It's that simple. Yeah. Exactly,
man. Dude, that is exactly right, man. And it is so freaking beautiful, because our beauty is in our variety, man. We are not bots. We are not robots. We are not designed to all believe the same science, all believe the same religion, all believe the same everything. No, it's not the way that it is. We all have our own spots. We all have our own ways. We all have our own styles. And so this is to be celebrated. This isn't conflict. This is contrast. It's beautiful. And man, when you could start to see the world in that way, you can love the world. That's why they were telling the Semites, you have to have dominion over nature and conquer nature, because nature was this thing you got to fight, and you got to get through the thorns and thistles and break through. It's like, no, man, no, that's all conflict and inflammation. That's just going to make you sick. This
Yep.
is nature's something to be admired and loved and be a part of it. And like, wow, I'm a part of this incredible power. That's freaking incredible. I can't believe it. And when you have that sense of awe in your life, you can't imagine how appropriate you become. You can't imagine how easy it is to love others because you see them in that same exotic incredibleness that can't be put into words, man. And you don't have to put 10 commandments in front of someone like that. They will love that person because you won't be able to stop them from loving them because they can see the nature inside of them. And nature is something that we love because it's what we are. We're nature creatures.
Yeah, you might hate a man's deeds, but you love the man, kind of thing. And it really is. And it's to love yourself as well. I mean, in all of that, which is really, I mean, that's a bigger challenge for a lot of people than loving others because of this infantilization, because of this trauma course that we've been on, you know. And, you know, you talked about Kathy O'Brien. She's been a guest on the show. You know, she's a great example of mind control. I think we've all been subject to various levels of mind control. You know, when we get into the whole KM story, the Khazarian Mafia story, it really catalyzes the motivations behind that, because I think people tend to get a little confused about why the world is the way it is. And I think your material in particular, and the stuff I've been studying forever, this is very deliberate and very obvious if you can see it. And you just have to come to an understanding about it by seeing the pieces. It's understanding your history.
That's key right there. That's key right there, because my father, none of the stuff that I talk about. So he doesn't believe in a Khazarian Mafia. He doesn't subscribe to the idea that the world has been taken over by satanic psychopaths. He doesn't, none of that. My father, he believes in a very simple world, and that is that the world has fallen. Satan has tainted the world, and someday Jesus is going to come back and save us. And until then, we are to endure. We are to somehow find a way through and be a light, but we are going to have to endure this hellhole. And that's the tragedy, is that the Buddhist at the same time sees the world as a paradise. So how do I get my father to see the world as a paradise exactly as it is? See, that's the tough thing. How do I get a person who thinks that they're a sinner and fallen, and the world is a fallen enterprise that's going to be doomed and destroyed by God? How do I get them to love these things outside of a religious context? I mean, seriously, they're going to have to see the world totally different. And how do I get my father to see the world like a Buddhist sees it, as a paradise? It's virtually impossible. Virtually impossible.
Well, I got to. So, what does your father think of the fact that the building at the Vatican is in the shape of a snake? I mean, it's. You've pointed that out. Is he willing to even look at this stuff?
No, these are levels that are above him in the sense of those are awarenesses that are past the foxhole that he's in. So from his peer and his vantage and how he's seeing the world, those are beyond his sight. Those are beyond the landscape that he's in. And he doesn't want a different landscape because he doesn't want a world without Jesus. My father does not want a world where Jesus is not Lord. He doesn't want that. And so he doesn't want to see a world where there are cons and evil people that put that idea of Jesus in his head. Because then it points to the self-responsibility. It's like, oh, I've been deceived. Well, if I could be deceived, I deserve it. I have to get out of this trap then. I then must respond. You see, those are enormous responsibilities that a person who's 80 years old is going to have a very hard time taking on. A person who's 70 years old is going to have a very hard, because they're responsible. It puts the responsibility on you. Like, I've got to go out and discover this stuff. I just want to read my Bible. I don't want to have to go out and read and discover all that stuff on. I just want to do what Jesus tells me. You see, a person who's in that trap, you see, they don't want to see the world that you and I see. That's so clear. It's like, it's so obvious there's a Khazarian Mafia. It's so obvious we're being run by psychopaths. It's so obvious these people hate us. But my father, he doesn't see that. He doesn't see that. And so I don't know how to show him that.
How about this? Ask him to tell you all the passages in the Bible where Jesus told people to worship him or call him Lord, to put him on a pedestal.
See, when you try
there aren't any.
When you try to use theology to break through a theologian, You're trying to use the religion. Like I just said, you cannot use the bounds and means of the religion to escape the religion.
Sure.
You
That
must
makes
use
sense.
other means.
Right.
See?
But that's got to
And
be a
this is
head
where-
scratcher. That's
Well, his
gotta,
dad's written over
This is
100
where
books.
Yeah,
when
that's
it said, this is where when it said the end isn't for everyone.
Right. Wait, what do you, okay, so what do you
Not
think
for
that
everyone.
means, Chuck? What do you think that means?
It means that there are going to be people who refuse to see a great awakened world. They don't want it. They don't want a world without Jesus. They don't care what you show them. They don't want it. And so they will stay disillusioned.
Right. The problem is right. That's what's that's what's the main contributor to children still being trafficked and used for satanic ritual.
Yeah.
Like that's the problem. This is so important because if we don't have these conversations, that's what continues. The bottom line, and I just cannot live in that world any longer knowing about this stuff. And I know you can't either.
Right.
it's an acquiescence to a control system.
Right.
And it's an easier path, right? You don't have to butt heads with anybody if you just submit, just acquiesce, just understand. You know, you look at culture. Let's look at today's culture where everybody's talking about, I don't know, Lambos and bling and whatever. Yeah, I mean, just the materialistic trappings. It's all predicated on "do as thou wilt." And by the way, that's not satanic. That's the Lemic. That's the Lema, which is the product of Aleister Crowley, and it was channeled by his girlfriend Rose in the Great Pyramid back in the day in Giza.
Yes, I read that.
Really important to understand Crowley and his influence. Yeah, really important to understand what Satan is. Satan is evil, but Satan is not the personification. People get Satan and Lucifer mixed up.
They give Satan more power than Satan has. That's the key. They give Satan far more power than Satan has, because the people who have an opinion of Satan typically believe that they're a sinner. And so they're always in this lesser mode. They're always in this lesser than. And so they relate to Satan as a more powerful figure or as a higher figure. And with Jesus, then they can face him, but they can't face Satan on their own. That's fear. That's indoctrinated fear. And that's how the sinner gives Satan more power than Satan has, or that it is, or what it is. It's this really weird, nutty idea that you get because you're in the fear state as a Christian. You're in the fear state, meaning that you're a sinner and the world is fallen, you see. And so, again, these are enormous puzzles that the Christian, the staunch Christian, it's going to take a tremendous amount. And that's why I think more events, heavier events are coming, because it's going to take a lot of accident. It's going to take a huge car accident to get a person out of that mindset. Man, free my father to get him out of that mindset. I mean, that's going to take a hell of a world event to get him to step back and say, wait a minute. And so just imagine that when you asked how much longer it's going to take. I'm not sure. It depends on how willing people are to face themselves, to take on the responsible approach and to learn and educate themselves. I don't know where we're at as a society as far as that's concerned, but I am concerned because what I do see is a lot. I mean, I see a ton of people, and no offense, I don't say this wrong in a bad way or anything, but I see a lot of people subscribing to some pretty odd science, namely flat earth. And I see them subscribing to this, and it's like, okay, well, that's a byproduct of a lack of awareness. That's a lack of awareness of the sciences. And then it's also a byproduct of being fed and indoctrinated science about flat earth. In the same way, people have been indoctrinated with religion. And so they can't understand the world if it doesn't have sin, in the same way the flat earther can't understand the world unless it's flat. These are psychologies. You have to break these down with facts, knowledge, experience, awareness, discernment. It's not going to be simple. And it worries me because there's been so many people that have been taken by religion, by this idea that, like, if you don't get this injection that they put in you, you're going to die. Well, it takes a weak person to buy into that and say, okay, well, I'm going to go put that injection inside of me because I'm going to die if I don't. This is a person that has no self-authority. They're looking to someone else outside themselves for authority. And see, all of these things are the same pattern. The Christian is in the same boat, in that they won't understand spirituality if it's not injected with Jesus as the nurse. You see, it's mindsets, and this is what has to break down. So the Great Awakening is going to go as quickly as the mindsets of people break down, and that's your work. That's my work. being done. Like, that's why our work is so important, well beyond you and me. The overall movement of the white hats is so important because it's something that's going to have to come naturally out of people. You can't force them. That's just more fear. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, but wouldn't you say, like, this whole concept of sin, like, I mean, there's a way to spin this for Christians, I think, we put our heads together, we'll come up with a good one, I think, Chuck, but the idea of sin. So early on, I always thought of original sin as just that separation from God, to separate yourself from that which is you. I mean, it's like I'm not, I don't have the same DNA as my mother. Well, that's an out and out lie. Well, we're creations of a creator. We're a product of that. We're a fractal of that. Embrace that. But the idea is the closer you get to God, the more you embody a life that is, I guess, without sin in the sort of in the traditional sense, but more in a practical sense, only because you're returning to your nature. So the very idea of this idea that we are so separate from God, I think, is the crux of the problem. And it's also our vulnerability to, these monstrous folks like the Khazarians or, whomever, is behind all of this. It makes us highly vulnerable and susceptible to being infantilized.
Yes. And the falling, like I said earlier, the falling into sin is a misperception of the reality of the universe. It's a misperception. It's a blaming of the universe. It's a blaming that there's a problem. It's a blame thing that because there's evil, something is wrong. No, dude. Evil is simply part and parcel to the good and evil that are in and compose nature. There's nothing wrong. This is what people have to get past. The universe doesn't need to be fixed any more than you need to be fixed. You're not born broken. The universe wasn't tainted. You have to get these ideas of fallen, needs to be destroyed. The white needs to win. You got to get those conflictive ideas out of your mind in order to overcome the idea of sin. Sin is a label for simply negative energy. That's all it is. It's a label, and the church attached eternity to it in order to bind you into it. That's why they made you a sinner, because it would eternally bind you into the mindset, eternally meaning your life on earth, will bind you into this mindset that something's wrong with you, something's wrong with the universe, and it has to be fixed. And you can't do it because you're a sinner. You have to look to something else. This is how you infantilize a person's mind. This is how you make them a permanent child, because they never will look to themselves thinking that they're a sinner. They are locked in this adolescent mindset. And so that the only person that can escape that is themselves. And they're using a child's mind, and a child isn't looking for exits. They're kind of happy in their little world that they're in. They don't see outside of it. They're taken by the perception. And so this person has to take on a maturity, and the maturity is not seeing evil as sin or darkness as sin, but simply a contrast of good. Like blue is a contrast of white light. When I write music, when I play music, that is a contrast that comes out of me. That music is coming out of me. The music is not me. It's a form of me coming out. And so there's nothing wrong or that needs to be fixed here. It's just an aspect that's coming out. And evil coming out of the ether is just an aspect of the ether coming out. It's just a byproduct. Just in the same way good is a byproduct that comes out of God, in the same way evil is a byproduct that comes out of God. People need to stop separating it and just see this. These are contrasting in the same way the north has a south pole and the south has a north pole. They are the same pole. Good and evil are the same energy. It's just expressed in a different way. But there's nothing wrong here.
I'm just so glad that you said you're a musician, because if you weren't, my intuition would have been completely off.
I gotta say, you're really getting to something here with balance, and it's what I was talking about earlier. And I tend to lean towards balance because it's reflected in nature. When a lioness takes down a gazelle, we don't see that as an act of Satan. We see that as nature working in harmony with itself. When a
Exactly.
whale, whatever. The examples are many. We are part of that balance. We are seeking that balance, and our impact. We're the least in balance of any of the species on the planet, which is by design. I mean, we're being manipulated into that, and war is a great example. You ask any of the soldiers on either side if their true desire is to go kill the other side. An honest answer would be no. Like, yeah, I don't have any problem with that guy. I don't even know who that guy is. The government told me to do it, so I'm doing it.
Yeah. I opened up one of the chapters of my book with that example from McKenna, where he says you know that society and culture is not your friend when they send you off to camp, give you a gun and some training, and then send you across overseas to kill a bunch of strangers. That's when you immediately know that culture is not your friend. And that is exactly what people have to realize. Religion is not your friend. Science, the way it's been taught right now, is not your friend.
Because
medicine
it's a religion.
is not your friend. The way they're doing things, they're not your friend. That doctor that's giving you chemotherapy, he is not your friend. She is not your friend. Chemo is poison. It will poison and kill you. It will harm your liver. It will slowly torture and destroy you. Okay. Now, granted, that doctor has been trained in that way. They're not doing it maliciously. They're not giving you the chemo thinking, yeah, I'm going to kill this patient. No, they're thinking this is the right thing to do. This is what the authorities have told me to do. And this is what I need to do to heal this person, you see? And this is all part of the deception. In the same way, the pastor is telling all the congregation, you guys are a bunch of sinners. And I know this because the authority told me. And so all these people get diseased in the same way. You have a doctor that tells all his patients, all you people need chemotherapy. They're being diseased. The system is teaching people incorrect information that harms you. It will harm you. And that's what people have to understand when they start seeing their religion that they believe in, that it is actually harming them. And when you see that, you begin to think, wait a minute, I don't want to be harming myself. I don't want to be harming others, and so on and so forth. And this begins to break up when a person sees, hey, my brother had cancer and he went and got chemotherapy and it killed him. That person will say to themselves, wait a minute, the chemotherapy didn't heal them, it harmed them. Or 10 years later, they got cancer again and they died from it. This person, that's the kind of experience that you have to see to awaken you, because it has to come from within you. It's not going to come from outside of you. That doctor is not going to tell you, no, don't take the chemotherapy. Please go do your own thing. They will never say that. They will kick you out of their office if you don't do the chemotherapy like they did to me. And so
and
you have to find yourself.
Certain people will kick you out of your lives if you take that standpoint. I mean, because they've taken science, which encompasses medicine, Western medicine, and they've turned it into a religion, and it's run by big pharma. So it's a bunch of Nazi
greedy aristocrats,
clerics. It's a bunch of Nazi clerics basically that are forcing you into this idea where if you don't accept it as truth, you're a heretic, because you're not just disagreeing because the science doesn't make sense to you. Because science is just a method, right? Science doesn't ever say trust the science. Science says don't trust anything. Let's go through a method and see what we can prove. There's no ever trusting of the science. It's so infuriating. But do you see what I'm saying? It's a bunch of clerics now. What does Pfizer have to say about how you should live your life? That became a big part of all our lives for a while. And it was marketed at us with billions and billions of dollars. A lot of those dollars were our own dollars just to fund this message and just hammer us into this way of behavior and belief. And the one thing we're afraid of is ostracism. And the one thing we were subject to the most during the COVID years was ostracism, with the fucking gulag. That's what we were faced with. So if you wanted to be principled, and if you wanted to be compassionate and kind and speak the truth, you were a heretic and you must go to the gulag. That's where we ended up.
That's exactly the threat holds you in place. Yeah, that's the shackles. Threat is the shackles. That's what shackles you into the Plato's cave. That's why you never leave Plato's cave.
So the Plato's cave. More than ever. I'll tell you, Plato was really onto something. I think that guy had a crystal ball.
Well, one thing I wanted to say that Chuck pointed out, you said, and much like Scott, was it back in 2015, 2016, you really started kind of expressing your viewpoints on Facebook? or some
Yes,
kind
yeah, that's what birthed the YouTube thing. So on Facebook,
Right.
yes. So I started, and I wasn't into it, but I just kind of started getting into it because I kept saying stuff that really pissed me off happening in the world. And I'm like, why am I not seeing people putting a voice to this? Because this is messed up. And so I started, and I tell you, it's really funny because I started my Facebook page just like totally normal, not anything extreme, just an everyday dude, just kind of doing my thing. And so I'm building a friendship, and I'm getting hundreds and hundreds of likes, and it's all good. It's all high school friends and all this kind of thing. It's great. And then I start finding out about John Podesta. Start finding out about Pizzagate. I start finding out about the entire governmental system. And on top of that, about all religion. And I'm like, holy shit. And then the Facebook is like this incredible platform. And I'm like, well, hell, I've got hundreds of thousands of people that follow me. I'm just going to start preaching. So I just let it all out, man. I started posting all this stuff, and I just saw my follows, my friendships, just all declining from getting like 90, 100 likes to like 1 or 2 likes, like everyone just like leaving. And now just completely ostracized. And it was all of that happening. And I realized I don't care because I'm so passionate about this. And I don't care if these people don't want to hear what I have to say. I'm going to say these things because they need to be said. And it lit this passion in me. And then that's when I did my Luciferian video. I posted it to Facebook, and something happened. And like I got like 10,000 views, and I'm like, holy shit, what's going on? And I had like 20 people write me and say, dude, you have to put this on YouTube. And so I did. And now the thing has gotten like 250,000 views. Like, what the heck is going on? I had no idea. But yeah, dude, I totally went through that whole metamorphosis where I'm like liked by everyone, and then everyone leaves.
Oh man, that hit me so hard in like what 2016, 2017.
You guys went through it at the same time. I jumped in a little later, but kind of the same experience.
I had it a little easier than Joe when he suddenly was trying to share some things he learned. Like. Fuck, they crucified him for that. But me, I've been saying this shit for 20 or 30 years. Like, my story didn't change. I just expanded it the more I learned because I'm addicted to learning. I just have to learn all the time. And
good for you.
Like how you came about it. Like, I was painting houses. Like, I would take on these massive contracting projects. And I'd put the headphones in, and I'd work 14 hours, and I'd be listening all day long. To just learning all day long. And then I go home and listen to another 6 hours and get up and do it again the next day, every day. Like, that was, this is not easy to acquire this stuff. Yeah. But I was always an artist, and I was always considered delightfully eccentric, and people enjoyed entertaining my ideas about the world because they were different and they were compelling, and it was a fun conversation. And then all of a sudden something happened where I was the enemy and a heretic and off to the gulag with you, Yes. And I mean, not as much. I don't think I suffered as much because people always knew me that way. But
that was the thing. See, dude, I had built my entire world around Christianity and Christian friends. Everything I knew was Christian. Every relationship I had was Christian. And so when I went on Facebook and started talking heresy, dude, and my father, who's an international Christian figure, right? I mean, the alienation was incredible. I mean, people were angry at me. Like, they were very upset with what I was saying, what I was doing, because it was pure heresy. And I'm the kind of person that doesn't really care. So I'll just say what I'm going to say. I'm not really worried what people think about that. And so you combine those two things, leading religion and not caring.
Yeah, you're in a perfect situation. Like, it's by whatever you want to call it, you're placed here because the fact that you're the son of a preacher man is really important. I mean, it's mind-blowing when I heard your story and what you've been through, and the cancer and the awakening, and that you really started delving into this in your 40s. Like, you and what your work, what you're doing is so needed and so appreciated and by those. And I hope that our audience, just goes to your page and just learns what I'm learning. I'm addicted to your YouTube page now.
Yeah, and to take the time and the effort you've taken to lay out the material in the way you have, I mean, for me, it was like, on a camping trip or something. Well, we're 3 beers in, Scott's going to start talking about Saturn, and why everybody worships Saturn. I mean, seriously, that's how my friends have known me for years. before any of this shit. Yeah, yeah,
That's really funny.
yeah. Like it's all about Saturn, isn't it, Scott? Yeah.
Well,
And it's like, well, it kind of is.
In his video, he shows that Saturn, when you unfold it, it unfolds into the cross. And it's just like,
It's
boom.
Oh,
absolutely
yeah,
amazing,
and
man.
the whole dodecahedron. You know, yeah, it's
And I'm talking
everything
about
is there.
The black box, the six-sided,
The black sun.
the black sun. Sorry, yeah, it's
Yeah,
just,
which is at Mecca. What is it called at Mecca again? The box they all
The Kaaba.
the Kaaba, and they all become the rings of Saturn, and you know, I mean, it's
Exactly, man.
that's
How
Satan
the
worship.
irony- It's
Yeah, I mean, that's what it is.
incredible.
But it's in all the
It's-
religions. It's in all of them. You will see this in
And
all
I-
of
and
the
I'll-
religions, and you
There's
can't
no
unsee
doubt.
it.
yeah. Go ahead.
There's no doubt, and I'll leave with this because I got to go after this at 7:00. I got to go. But anyways, I want to say this: what you just mentioned, the fact that I woke up so late, and I was a staunch Christian. I mean, died to the wool, man, all the way in, right? And I completely was like that for 40 years. And so I have a perspective that every single Christian, conservative Christian out there has, because I've been in it. I've been in the camp. I've been one of the warriors. I've gone on the mission trips. I've gone door to door preaching the word, all that kind of stuff. I've done it. I've lived. I went to VBS every single summer. I went to summer camp in high school every single year. Like, I lived the Christian life. And so what I can bring to the table that is unique is that, because I can relate to these people at VBS. I can relate to them at summer camp. I can relate to them singing in choir as a kindergartner. I can relate to them going to church and singing all the hymns and listening to the pipe organ. I can relate to all of that. I was neck deep in all of it. And what I hope to do, because I can relate in that, is to help tease people out of that religion, out of being locked into it, because I totally can identify with them in it. I know what it's like to be a servant for Jesus. I know what it's like to turn your life over to Christ time and time again. I know what it's like to rededicate your life and say to yourself, I'm not going to sin anymore. I'm going to do a good job. I'm going to be a good servant to Jesus. I know what it's like to hand Jesus the wheel. So I can completely understand those philosophies. I can talk that language. I can quote those verses, man. I can walk in that space. And what I offer is offer a way out for those people that are so indoctrinated in. And that's why I want to try and capture my dad here one of these days, that are so indoctrinated in that they can see their way out on their own. And that's one of the things I want to do here in the next couple of months when I go see and visit my father, is I want to have a long conversation with him and try to help him see this world that I can see so clearly. That's one of the things I really want to do, to see if I can help him see it. But anyway.
Maybe talk about Saturn. I mean, that's a little divorced from things, but you know it's coming around. That's a great way to do it, I think. Maybe we'll see. But
and Chuck, yeah, I was going to say, I know you need to go, but I do want you to just let the audience know where they can find you. I know we've talked about it, and maybe where they can find more information on Saturn, because some people are confused. Like, do we mean the planet and what we're meaning? So please, if you could tie it up with a bow right now, because I know you got to go, but we were so appreciative to have you here.
Yeah, thank you so much. Well, thank you for the opportunity to be here. It has been a joy. I love talking to guys like you, or gals like you, because it's so nice to identify with folks.
Well, the audience is already talking about part 2. They're already excited for part 2. So we hope you'll honor us with with a part 2, and maybe a part 3 or 4 campfire session. We're in the same state. We got to get together.
Yeah, he's in Washington State too. So anyway, where can people find you?
Yeah, you can find me on YouTube at my YouTube site. I'm hard to find, but I haven't done any work to advertise. I haven't paid any money. I don't even have a blue check mark. I'll get one of these days. But I like that a little bit right now, because it helps cull the audience a bit. Because I think if I was really advertising and push it out there, I'd get a lot of hate, because there'd be a lot of people that weren't looking for me and weren't looking to find this kind of deeper principle. And they would really get pissed off at me and think that I'm like angry at my dad or something. And I don't want that to come out. So it is kind of cool. It is kind of a good thing for now, at least, that it's a little bit hard to find me. But you can find me by simply going to YouTube and typing in Chuck Swindoll Jr. That usually will bring it up, or Luciferianism. That will bring me up under Chuck Swindoll Jr. And then you can find me on Facebook. I just kind of have a public page. I do post some personal stuff from time to time, But I'm a very open person. I'm very willing to share and all that kind of stuff. And I'm on Facebook at Chuck Swindoll Jr. also, same name. So that's how people can find me. I'm happy to answer questions. I get asked a lot of questions on YouTube, and I try and answer as many as I can. As far as researching, get onto Twitter. Start following. Look at who I follow. I only follow about 100 people. Look at some of the people that I follow more towards the top as of recently, and they will start showing you folks, namely that that person that's on X that I mentioned. He's got a weird name, but it's under my follow list. If you begin to pursue some of these guys that are on Twitter, they are posting some amazing stuff that you can then take names and words. What I do is I'll take a word or name or something that they mention, and I'll be like, okay, I'm going to go check that out. So Saturn, let's say. So I take that name Saturn, and I'll just really benignly just go to Google, just type in Saturn, just see what the mainstream media is going to show me, just see what comes up. And then I'll go through a few pages down, and then I'll begin to look. And eventually you'll start to find stuff that's hidden. You'll start to find stuff on Dogpile. You start to find stuff on Rumble by searching those keywords. And eventually, like I just came across this incredible dude named Billy Carson. This guy is incredible. Like, wow. I'm using, dude, the guy's incredible. All right, my next video is going to be on electromagnetism. And dude, the guy did an exposition on electromagnetism in the pyramids that I was like, oh my God, that is the ultimate opening for my next video. So I'm going to be using him. That's how you do it. You get out there and you surf. You find different people on X that you resonate with, like you guys. Find someone like you that you resonate with, and you guys post stuff that will lead people. It has to be organic. It's not going to come from one place. It's not going to come from one book. You have to go out there and pursue it on your own. And the information is out there. You can get it. You can find it. A great place to start also is my God Eater videos. They show very plainly in history without a whole lot of woo. Just find, hey, this is an altered history, and you can find it and search it out. If you look at some of the things that I've pointed out, you can find out for yourself if what I'm telling you is the truth. And it all is laid out in there. So those would be a good places to start. And yeah, man, it's been an incredible time being with you guys. I thank you so much for the opportunity. Thank you.
Yeah, and we're going to post those links below so you don't have to hunt them down. Might as well call it required reading because it's so phenomenal. I mean, really, I can't endorse anything more, for the most part. It's really hard to find this information assembled in the way that Chuck has done it. He put a lot of effort into it, and it will really, really help you understand where we're at right now. And hopefully in the next conversation, we'll get to drawing some parallels as to, where we're at right now and why based on that material. Maybe it's good we didn't get to it today because maybe people will familiarize themselves and we'll have a more robust.
It's a lot, yes. And I would love to talk to you guys after I finish my nature series. It's going to be done here in the next few months. A few months from now, I'll be done in the summertime. I got 4 of them. I got 3 more to do. I got the second one just about done. It's a little bit more post-production. And then I got a third. And then the 4th one is the one I'm most excited about because it's going to tie in the chakra system with the tarot and the tree of life. And I'm really excited.
And the work you're doing on identity and how important that is in today's paradigm, that's huge. Yeah. And I encourage you to check out the work of Gigi Young and the Dark Journalist as well. Not to distract you from the important work you're doing, but it's good stuff. I appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah.
Right on.
Thanks, guys. Thank you so much for coming over. It's been a wonderful conversation.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We'll be in touch. I'll send you the raw footage so you can put it up, and we'll be in touch very soon.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
All right.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Take care, Chuck.
Thanks so much.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Later.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Thank you.
All right.
Wow. And then maybe he'll come back with some hair care tips as well.
Hey, there
which
you
I
go.
think that's what he was talking about on Facebook. Yeah. Oh, he's still here.
Yeah, you just hit, and we'll talk to the audience for a little bit. We have a live show tomorrow night as well. So for anyone sticking around, if Chuck, when he heads, we're going to have I'm just double checked. Sometimes you'll see me on my phone because I'm just double checking to make sure that things are lined up. We should have Carrie Cassidy on the show tomorrow night, and that should be at 6 p.m. Pacific. And that'll be our first live with her. Yeah, she can be but she sometimes, I guess, what's the word? She's a little snarky at times, but
she's a seasoned old bag. I mean, she deserves to be cranky about what she's been at this forever.
Oh, I know. Absolutely.
Yeah, and she has a little attitude.
Yeah.
But, she's come by it honestly, I think. I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah.
And I think I got a rise out of Chuck. He was laughing his ass
Oh,
off
yeah.
with the hair character.
Well, he just makes me want to just drive a convertible Corvette and have longer hair and have the top down.
Like a Stingray.
Just,
like back in the
yeah.
day, Corvette Summer.
Yeah.
Just,
You know what he's like? He reminds me of like he'd be an amazing surfing instructor, but he's putting that time into educating humanity.
No,
right now.
I'm
But
telling you,
I'd love to go surfing with him sometime, even though I'm not that great of a surfer.
I gotta tell you guys, and I mean, and this is important. I've spent thousands and thousands of hours on this material. Chuck's put it together in, what, a 2.5 hours, and then another 2.5 hours. You're getting so much out of that. It took me years to assemble my understanding of this stuff, and he's dead on. I mean, there's a couple little things I'd quibble about, but for the most part, this is a really, really good primer. And I can't endorse it enough. I think it's really, really important that you watch it and understand it, so that you know who controls you and why, so you can stop that. So yeah. So what I'd like to do, Kevin, if you're out there, if you want to pop in, I'd love to hear what you thought of the show.
Yeah, exactly. This is a great idea. We had Kevin on a live last Friday, and people dug it, and they really dug Kevin. And I don't know if we had a chance to tell him that.
How could you not? I did. And
yeah,
how could you not love Kevin? The only thing we don't love about Kevin is his microphone is so faint. So speak up, Kevin. Tell us what you thought of the show.
Well, I really wasn't talking, so.
Well, not this time. I'm talking about the last. You
time.
Were featured at our last live, and we were graced with that. Thank you very much for being a part of it.
Well, thank you.
Yeah,
I have to say, it's one thing to watch Chuck's pieces. So far, I've only had time to watch the first in his Khazarian line.
Mm-hmm.
But to listen to him tonight, that expungement, that data, I mean, he just knocked you upside the head with a bunch of data.
Yeah.
And it was peaceful. I know this sounds stupid in my head saying it out loud, but I wasn't overwhelmed. And I was open enough to actually listen. And most of it, like you said, Scott, it's not new. This is stuff I've been piecing together for the better part of a decade or so.
It's new to a lot of folks.
but to hear a man who took it and made it palatable to people who are still locked into what I call the three pitfalls: religion, politics, and my favorite, ego. And he found a way to break through, not sledgehammer into their head, but he found a way to break through each of those and bring that knowledge forward and say, hey, this is what is out there. This is what pertains to this. And he does it in a gentle way, but he does it with passion. And that's the one thing you cannot disconnect from the man. He has that passion. It's in his heart. The fire's just coming out of him. But it's a warm, gentle fire. And you just want to sit there and just soak in everything.
Yeah, I could agree more. I think Chuck's about to blow up. He came on and he's like, I don't know, it must have been some influencer or somebody's, must have shared my stuff because I've been getting all kinds of attention. And I leaned in and I said, you're welcome. Because I've been sending his stuff to everybody. I'm kidding. I don't have that much pull. Somebody else probably feels the way I do about his material, but
well, we're certainly doing what we can,
and we will continue.
I have no idea the impact, other than people are watching the show. And the main thing is he does such an amazing job that this is crucial for humanity in this time, especially when they're learning from someone that has been through what many indoctrinated Christians have been through.
Yeah,
I can't think of a better person that woke up later in life that is so passionate and empathetic and humble and not doing it for sales. And it's an amazing thing to watch and to be part of.
And he's local.
It's really cool. He's in Washington State.
So
he's like a dude.
Yeah, I sent Joe the Khazarian part 1 and you know, the God Eaters, and then I sent him part 2, and then I'm like, we got to get this guy in the show. Joe reached out, made it happen immediately. Joe's really good at that, and but he said we got to get him on the boat, you know, with Jamie and with
yeah, There's,
so we might do some kind of a retreat here in the
summer
Northwest.
retreat. Yeah, there's some things that are starting to actually kind of. There's things that Scott and I have been talking about for many years that are starting to actually kind of come to fruition. And you know, like we talked about, you know, if Scott or I had families or wives or, you know, jobs, like in a, I mean, I not even in a way, like we're here to do what we're doing, and it's unfolding beautifully, so we can bring people like Chuck to more people. I don't know what the full impact of it's going to be, but man, I can't think of a better thing to be doing right now. I just feel so blessed to be able to do this.
Well, it's because the money's so good. No, we do this because it's a calling. We do this because, I mean, it really is gratifying. And Joe and I talk about the community that we've built, the great friends that we have all over the world now, like-minded people that are really invested in making the world a better place in a meaningful way, and connecting with everyone. And you can't put a price on that. I mean, you really can't. It's been a huge privilege, and I'm bowled over all the time every time I think about it. I know Joe is as well. And
well, especially being you know, doing music, doing films, you know, working on music videos with Scott and other people, and just you know, in a way, being used to, you know, I feel we've done good work, at least good work, so, you know, whatever anyone's opinion is, but not really having an audience, but realizing that the odds are stacked against you when you're not part of that Hollywood family or unit, or whatever you want to call that. But then knowing that that's nothing, after learning about what it is, that I want nothing to do with it. So in finding an audience just by because I just my whole life I didn't want a 9-to-5. I didn't want a regular job. I didn't want to sit in traffic. I just wanted to be me and help people. And I found it. It's taken my whole life, but I found.
Yeah, from the time we were both small children, we'd always hoped that one day we would be delivering a show on the internet from a 1969 Airstream.
Not really, but yeah.
And my God, it's happened. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, that's one way to look at it. I know he's just
no.
joking.
The larger point I'm making is we find ourselves here. What an odd place. No one would have ever seen this coming. I had a completely different vision for my future and where I would end up.
Yeah.
What I'm pleased with is how gratifying this is. You know, you really, you know, and as you get older, and we have, you start to really reprioritize and think about what's important, and community is important. Being in the gulag right now, I think we'd be suffering pretty hard. But I guess we're out here in the gulag with y'all having a great time, you know. Community is important, and making sense of this world is kind of everything. I can't imagine.
Well, we've both
just
been teachers
along for the ride.
You know, I've been
Sure.
like, you know, you've been in the formal education system. I've been an outdoor ed instructor, and just trying to help make sense, especially for kids. And then you start realizing, but you know, I was never drawn to the formal education system. Like, so many of the things about my life make sense now that I didn't realize at the time. And I had a very traumatic experience in college with a professor that, you know, he only allowed a certain amount, what I think it was 70% or so of his class to pass. And somehow I got partnered with someone that he really didn't like, and he was verbally abusive towards her. And then I got sucked into that, and I wasn't allowed to pass his class, and I went through the school court system, and it was awful. It was awesome. And I really loved Bellingham. I loved Western Washington University, and the experience I had there. But that was really, really brutal for me, just just trying to do my thing and get a 4-year education. But man, like it was a big part, and I'm thankful for it now. I can't believe I'm fucking saying that. It's been traumatic, but it helped, that and certain things and conversations with Scott and conversations with my father have led me to being right where I need to be. And if we can help just even a couple people, see the world and wake up to it, we're doing our job. So
I love Sierra Red says this gulag is great. She said it twice, so she must be. You're right. This is the best gulag going, honestly. We have the best gulag, I think.
Yeah.
So Kevin, was there anything that particularly stood out to you with Chuck? We got the echo thing happening.
Yeah, with Chuck, one of the things I noticed is and I just dropped in the chat.
Yeah, thank you.
Direct YouTube, that's all his stuff. That's his page.
Thank you.
Yeah. And we put it in the actual comments too, because guys, sorry, this chat disappears once we shut this down. But anyway.
Yeah, if you want any permanent comments, you got to make
go on the comment section. Yeah. But anyway, Kevin, please go ahead. Sorry, Dan.
So, I mean, the one thing that really stands out with what Chuck is saying, this is about us realizing whom we really are. And Scott knows this because we've had the talk, and this has really been hitting me a lot lately because I always look for those synchronicities in life. And the word authenticity kept coming up, and then a friend of ours dropped this video. And they were talking about, in order for you to be out here in the world, to love, to be at peace, you have to know yourself. You have to have that authenticity factor. And with Chuck, you get the whole package because you got a man who has lived a life dedicated. By his own words, he explains it in full detail. He's very honest, like he said. But at the same time, he's not out here trying to browbeat anyone. He's just trying to let you know, hey, there's a lot more out here. Here's some information. Go look it up. Don't believe me. Go look it up. And when he does that, and especially in this interview, because like I said, if you listen to the pieces, it's very matter of fact, but it's a lot of detail and it's really good detail. But listening to him in the interview, it was just like, you can feel that fire in him. And it's like, damn, I want that fire in me.
Yeah.
What really stood out. Let me just say that.
Wait, say that one more time, Kev.
That's what really stood out to me is
beautiful.
How he does that.
When I envisioned this interview, I kind of had, because 4 hours of content is just 2 of his videos. There's a lot of material there, and it just so resonates with me. But I was thinking of a certain structure, and we did anything but. I mean, in true TruthStream fashion, we just let it roll and rip, and I think that was great. But
so something just came up in the chat, and I have to ask. So this is part of the live. So Starry Patriot. So he or she, whoever Starry Patriot. I love Chuck Swindoll, his father. I used to skip college classes to listen to him on the radio. So I have to ask Starry Patriot, have you watched this interview? Or are you familiar with Chuck Swindoll Jr.'s work, knowing, having followed Chuck Swindoll Sr. and now watching Jr., and that this is 2 different worlds?
You get the contrast.
You get the contrast. I mean, what was that like? My gosh, I don't know how to. I almost want to invite him on the show.
Like in Vegas, Tito, give me a tissue.
Tito, give me a tissue. Yes.
Yeah.
So I would love to know more from Starry Patriot. I don't know how you can type the cliff notes there, but what is it like to have studied Chuck Sr. and now listen to Chuck Jr.? I mean, that's got to be an interesting duality, I suppose. I don't know what to even call this. So, but yeah, that's the thing. So his father, I believe that I don't know if it was in Texas or somewhere in the South is where the ministry.
He's a big evangelist, right?
Right. Yeah, and I mean, like someone had talked about, like, it was the interview that he did with a girl named Ashley. So that it was like what it was like for him as a kid, like his dad was like a Billy Graham. But what Chuck Jr. compared it to would be like the king and queen coming to an event, and you're their kids, and you're expecting, you know, people are just going to look at you differently. So he didn't really have a normal childhood where he could just hang out with his friends, because there was this whole like, oh, Chuck Sr.'s there, and they were looked at, you know, revered or whatever. And so it really took him till later in life to realize, oh, you know, my friends didn't really look at me in a normal way. It was all tied into that. So he's really had to extract himself from that, go through the cancer and all that for him to kind of.
It sounds like the cancer was his deliverance in a lot of ways. I mean, that was the catalyst for him to really break out of that thinking into the work he's doing now. Right.
Well, no. So Starry Patriot. No, we get that his dad's a great theologian, but so do you resonate with Chuck Jr.'s work? I mean, so I'm just wondering if you used to watch Chuck Sr., have you really delved into Chuck Jr.'s work, since it's two different worlds? That's my question.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a difference in this.
Yeah, completely.
Maybe
because people will go to Chuck Sr., you know, they'll type in the father's name and you can't really find.
I'm picturing like a down home Southern revival with a big tent and, you know, the healers and all that stuff.
Well, here, I'll show you his dad's page. If you go back,
that hair.
I love it. So here's his dad.
No, I've seen it. Yeah.
Yeah. There he is.
Yeah.
Wow. So yeah, we'll see what the feedback is. Kevin, anything else that you'd have to add to the experience of watching this tonight, since you're the one person that we can actually chat with right now? And a great person at that.
Or Kevin, alternatively, do you want to talk about Saturn?
Yeah.
No, thank you. Not tonight, Scott.
Oh, come on.
I've had many.
Okay. So can you explain, because you know, what is your take on, because people are wondering what the Saturn part was. Can you go into a little bit about that, at least the cliff note?
God. How do I cliff notes? I was giving him a hard time because it's such a huge topic.
Right.
So if you'll notice, there's a lot of, I guess we'll say, worship around the cube.
Right. Even the hat on our graduation caps is based on that. Just to let the viewers know.
Yeah, absolutely. The mortar. Yes. And you know, the big cube in Mecca, the Jews, the Orthodox Jews will place a cube either on their wrist with 7 wraps of leather, that's the rings of Saturn, or on their head. You'll see them with the cube on their head. One of the scariest private intelligence firms in the world is called Black Cube. The most prevalent quantum computer in the world is the D-Wave, and it's a black cube. Steve Jobs introduced the first black cube into the personal computer realm years ago with the Next project. There's a lot of references to Saturn, and what it is what we've observed. Now, what's odd is that this is ancient lore that knew about the cube. What we know now with telescopes and so on and so forth is that there is a cube on the top, on the crown or the pole of Saturn,
the planet.
Yeah,
right.
Now, I mean, it's a 2D. It's a rendering.
Right.
It's a little bit unexplained. I mean, there's various ideas of how that happened, but anyway, the cube is always a reference to Saturn. Kronos is another name for Saturn. Baal is associated with Kronos and Saturn. I mean, you go on. There's all these evil deities that are heavily worshipped even today, usually in Hollywood. You know, it's all about Saturn. Our calendar, you know, it was altered to accommodate Saturday, Saturn Day, Saturnalia. Our Christmas celebration on the 25th of December is really a holiday about Saturnalia. I mean, it goes on and on and on and on, and it's also the Black Sun. So the Black Sun was, I mean, just to give you context, you know, in today's parlance, you see a symbol on the plate carriers that the Ukrainian soldiers were wearing with a symbol, and that symbol was the symbol of the black sun. That's Saturn. So there's a correlation between Saturn and Satan.
Right.
Satan is a misunderstood thing, and I don't like to bring the two together, but it'll help in this instance. But the black sun, the Nazis were heavily involved in the black sun. It endures today. It's much more powerful than you can imagine in terms of following. Hollywood is all caught up in this. Thelema is predicated in some ways into Saturnalia. They both embody the idea that you embrace the beast within, which is really to give yourself over to something rather than to embrace anything within.
The do as thou
that's
wilt.
not your nature. It sells you on the idea that your nature is beastly. Aleister Crowley was a pretty brilliant guy, very influential guy, and he again it was a channeled book called the Book of the Law, channeled by his girlfriend Rose, but he was and you'll see it today with Jay-Z and Beyonce and so on. The whole "do as thou wilt," that is the precept. That is the one commandment of the Book of the Law, which is Thelema. And why this is important to you guys, it's not just because some cultural figures found this captivating, or I guess in a roundabout way, maybe it is to some extent, because Jack Parsons was the father of modern rocketry. He hailed from Pasadena, California, and he didn't have the academic accolades, but he was a brilliant mind, and his science made him very valuable to the Department of Defense. And he was a devotee of Thelema. It was all about bringing forward his beast. And without getting into a really long diatribe, Thelema became a big part of the Department of Defense. It became a big part of all the defense contractors. There is a religious or occulted spirit or practice within the Department of Defense associated with Thelema, which is associated with Saturn. So anyway, Saturn's a big topic. It's all the evil. There's a little bit of balance. It's just a planet, whatever. But what we've, as humans, have done with it is there's also this whole idea that prior to our current sun, Saturn was our sun, and in those conditions, when Saturn was the sun, everything on Earth was in this purple cloud of plasma, and so everything had kind of a purple hue. Was very oxygen rich. We have a mostly nitrogen atmosphere now, but it was mostly oxygen at the time. Plants were bigger, people were bigger, animals were bigger, dinosaurs.
Is that why they would wear? Some of the elites wear purple? Is it?
Oh, very much
so. It's part of that.
Yeah. The purple revolution. The color revolutions. The purple one is very much part of Saturn. Hillary Clinton. There's all sorts of ties with her and Saturn. I mean, I could go on and on and on with all this.
I know, but this is great, so people have some kind of understanding of it.
Yeah,
associated with what we know as royalty. When you see the hierarchical structure with royalty, purple is a royal color. The commoner is not allowed to wear it,
and that's where the purple came from.
And that's not why we have a purple glow.
Well, no. I mean, really, that.
No, but I just mean right now in the show.
Oh, we do. Yeah, Saturn.
But the thing is it also goes a steep further. And yes, Scott, you brought it out at me, so I'm going to go that steep further.
Yes.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Kevin.
This is not to confuse the audience, but we're going to get away from Saturn and go to its opposing force. Now, Saturn is considered masculine. That's the masculine state, the state.
Chronos. Yeah.
Confused.
Time,
yes.
Yeah, manipulation of time, linear time comes from Saturn, Chronos. Yeah.
So the opposing force to that is Luciferia, not Luciferian, Luciferia. and that is Venus. That's what the representation of Venus. What is Venus called in ancient mythos? The light bearer, the morning
Right.
star. And what is Lucifer referenced as? He was the most
morning star.
brilliant angel and the morning star. So what we have seen play out in our consciousness right now here, and this is everybody, we're either pulled towards Saturn or Satan, or we're pulled towards Venus or Lucifer, Luciferian. It's the masculine and the feminine. That's what causes the divide in the masculine and the female. That's where the division comes. That's what we're seeing play out from the macro, the outside, to the micro, the inside. And with these polar forces, right now it seems like Saturn is winning because that's where we see the most occult symbols, and the cube is the best representation of it. And I mean, you've seen these cubes everywhere, even outside of what Scott described. You see them on the corners in New
Wall
York.
Street. Wall Street.
Yeah,
Along with the bull. And who's the bull? Moloch.
Moloch.
Who's also the owl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And remember, these were all positive symbols, except for the cube, in ancient times. And they were, well, we'll say warped. And they were warped for this war between these two forces. And what is believed to be the center, the sole focus of both of these, because remember, they're both geared towards destruction. We have to destroy everything. We have to die. They're both death worshipers because they believe that the true state of the universe is death, and that life is in opposition to the true nature of the universe, which is death. Which, if you read natural law and stuff, is in opposition to natural law, which says that there is no such thing as death, because death cannot be achieved as long as there is a vibration. And I'll call that a quiz, because otherwise we'll be on here for another 5-6 hours. Me, Scott, just going backward and forward.
Yeah, and since it's not a traditional Friday Night Live, we probably don't need to
Yeah.
drag it on too long.
Right. No, I think chatting about that, and also letting people know, we, as far as support, like this is our whole goal eventually off these lives. I mean, it doesn't hurt to have it happen sooner. We've been bartenders for a long time, and what we would like to do, all we really want from this show, because I mean, we're not here to make money. We're not here to make a killing. We just would love to subsidize what we made as bartenders by doing the show. And that people can do that from our Stripe link. We have a Patreon. There's amazing products that we have that are down in the links below. And I mean, that's all we're looking, because this has become a full-time job. So, you know, we always put the link in the chat and in the descriptor, etc. So we really do appreciate the support. It means a lot, even just a little bit, because it adds up. I mean, like I've said, if all 29,000 of our subscribers threw us $1, we'd be fine. We'd be fine for like half a year.
Oh yeah, and I mean, it's really, you are keeping the lights on.
Yeah, you're keeping the light. Like
it is full time. Like there's no time for other work. Really.
Yeah. I mean, to do this.
Yeah.
You know, and then I'm going in the studio. I'm already starting on a new song that's inspired by the children. I got to make sure that Steve, my producer, is, you know, keeping those lights on too, and it takes a lot of effort and time to do that. And you know, and I'm going to do the music video, I think, a pretty special way. I don't want to divulge it too much, but I think if it can work out, I'd like to incorporate some young kids that are creatives that are into editing and stuff like that, because it's about the children and what's happened to the children, and it's not gory or graphic, but it's, I mean, the theme is drowning all of this out with light. So I'm excited to present it to people. And so there's a lot that Scott and I are up to outside of what you see, and it takes everything we got to do this. So I just wanted to at least let people know that. And
yeah, well, and I appreciate you saying that, because it's not an easy thing to say.
It's awkward. I don't want to have to say it. I really don't. I mean, sure, we'd all love XRP or silver to go up, and then we don't even have to ask, because I do this regardless. But
Sierra Hot Toddy sounds lovely. what is this? Chicken Sam's? Is that it? How you say that?
Time.
Chicken Sam's. Time for a nightcap.
Chicken Sam's.
You know, it's probably a good idea.
Yep.
Thank you all for joining into the chat too. That really helps us to gauge how we're doing with you guys. If what we do is well received,
right?
I mean, we're gonna do it either way, but
right. We'd like to incorporate
it's nice to know what it means something to other people, and Chuck. Yeah, I'm just so happy. I mean, Chuck just dropped into my lap, and now
into yours.
Yeah, and my mind was blown because it's like. People ask me this stuff and I get tongue tied, and we get into hour number 3 and I'm still explaining this stuff because there's a lot to it. And now I can just say, here's a link. Watch this.
Watch Chuck.
He does a better job in many ways than, I mean, it's organizing that much knowledge and history. It's huge.
Yeah.
It's huge. I mean, I found one mistake in all of it. And what was it? Was something he attributed to Anton LaVey that was Aleister Crowley. I mean,
we'll have to talk to him.
What a tiny problem.
Yeah.
In about 6 hours of work that I've watched so far. So yeah, no, it's accurate. It's good stuff. And trust me, from a guy who's spent a lot of time becoming familiar with the material.
Yeah, Chuck has Scott's thousands of hours worth of
if they gave
stamp of approval.
If they gave out PhDs for this stuff, I'd have at least 2 of them. Chuck would too, man. He's the shit. I love that guy.
Yeah,
and I'm really looking forward to our next talk.
Absolutely.
So, because identity, that's a thing. It's a big one. It's so important with understanding what's happening culturally. You guys have heard me talk about it. And now he's taking it on. So I don't know. I feel very supported in Chuck's work. So
yes,
that's great.
And that's a good thing. It's because it's been very isolating for everybody, but especially for someone that's known about it a lot longer than many of us.
Well, everybody wants to talk about Q and what Trump's doing and all this other stuff, and there's no fundamental knowledge of why everything is the way it is.
Right.
So everybody's just, that's why they turn it into a religion, because they were taught to turn everything into a religion. Once you understand how we're being manipulated and why it is the way it is, it's pretty transparent. You could see it. And then it's not so much about what Trump's doing or what Q's doing, and it's more about what you're doing. But you have real, what am I saying? Investment. You have investment in this. Like it is about you. It is about you. Understand that, and this will help you understand that a lot more. So it's really nice. I don't know if I could, if I attempted, that kind of lecture that Chuck has put forward. I can't think that I would do nearly as good a job. He's done a phenomenal job with it.
Well, and having him do it allows us to work on the other things that.
Yeah. Quite frankly, No, but and it'll help clarify. I want to make it required reading for the audience, because I make reference to this stuff all the time, and I don't know that people understand what I'm saying when I say it. So it'll make for a more lively discussion in the comments.
Yeah.
And we love you guys. We really do. I like this feedback.
I do like the laughs comment. My poor older husband is stubbornly sound asleep. His dad was an evangelist, and then the FFS, which we know means for fuck's sake. So,
well, sleep soundly, Mr. Apache Tears.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think anything you want to add?
No, just thanks. And tomorrow,
Carrie
Cassidy, 6 p.m. Pacific.
It's gonna be fun. Vegas is looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And and everybody, thank you so much. Please follow us on our Twitter and our Telegram. It's just that's where we're able to communicate and interact and get you up to speed on other posts that we find. Telegram's really helpful for that. So.
Like, subscribe, infuriate your families, whatever you got to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's get the word out there, people. And if we had merch, I'd promote that too. Kevin, stick around for our usual recap. And thanks. What was that, Kevin?
sorry, just really quickly, Joe. Somebody's wanting to know how to make a donation. They were trying to use the link tree, but it's not there for some reason.
Oh, well, I'm there. There's the Stripe. If I'll put that again at the bottom, and if that doesn't work, there is my PayPal, which, you know, I mean, if that's what it takes,
if you need it, yeah, we can go there too.
yeah, by all means, I'll put that. You know, I guess I'll just probably put that in the
or my Venmo for
the
that
link
matter.
tree. Hey,
Yeah.
there we go. Either one. So yeah, it's it. So the PayPal, it's at Joe Rosati, and you'll see it'll say TruthStream right on there, and it's JoeRosati. But I'll put the Carrie's at 6 tomorrow, 6 p.m. Pacific. So yeah. Anyway, I'll add the PayPal to the link tree. So thank you guys. All right.
Yeah, thanks so much.
All right. Take care. We'll see you tomorrow.
Have a
Cheers.
great night.
Have a good night.
End session.